Okay, if we can come to order, this is the City of Pullman Planning Commission, our regular meeting of January 2026. It is 2026, isn't it? We begin with a roll call. John Anderson is here. Brent Carper.
Here.
Oh, wait a minute. Scott Hodge.
Here.
Jeff Joswick Jones.
Here.
Joe Callahan.
Here.
Arena English. Here. Angela Taylor.
Here.
Okay, we have a full house. The first item of business is the minutes of the special meeting of December 10, 2025. Do we have any comments, additions, completions, motions?
Mr. Chair, I move that the minutes of the December 10th, 2025 meeting be approved as prepared by staff.
Okay, we have a motion from Joe and a second from Lorena to accept the minutes as prepared by staff. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the first item of regular business to elect a chair and vice chair. So we are open for nominations.
John, I was kind of hoping as part of the minutes, we could talk a little bit about those rules and posting of recordings. Do you want to do that later? Or can we cover that as part of the minutes?
We've dispensed with the minutes.
Okay. Maybe other business then?
Yeah, we're on regular business, like
Okay.
chair and vice chair.
Mr. Chair, I nominate Brent Carper as vice chair.
Okay, we have typically voted on both at the same time.
I'll nominate John Anderson for chair.
I'll second that.
Okay,
You can combine it if you want.
we have motion from Joe for Brent for vice chair and Lorena second. Okay, motion from Brent for me as chair and Angela second. Do we have any discussion of the chair and vice chair?
I think you guys are doing a great job. Let's keep it up.
Okay,
I guess just as for discussion, is anybody else interested?
well, that's a good question. If somebody wants to step forward and volunteer, yes, go ahead. Impress your friends.
I'll put it out there. This is the last year. I will do vice chair this year, but I feel next year I'd like to see somebody else step into it. And I'd also like to talk a little bit about I can't remember if it's in the Chapter 17 code or if it's in the bylaws, but it does require that the commission provide a report to the city council every year, and it might say that the chair is supposed to provide that. I'm just not sure that's something we've been doing, so I'd like to revisit that a little bit as an expectation of the chair or the commission. I should have reviewed the rules, but.
It is in the bylaws. Has the staff been preparing any sort of annual report?
We have our community development annual report that we put out.
Okay.
It is in Title I, I believe that it says that commissions and committees will do an annual report. Last year, the mayor invited commissions and committees to give those reports. Which normally, it hasn't historically been done every year like it says in code, and so I think that's the direction we're now going. But I think in code it says that the first meeting in June, they didn't I think it was in like March last year when committees and commissions went. Might have been staggered, I can't remember when they all happened.
Okay. I will check on that. If I'm reelected chair, let's put it that way.
Okay.
I will check on that and provide a report in February about an annual report. I know that the Historic Preservation Commission has the same thing, but we have been doing that for a long time.
You've been doing a
Yeah,
report?
we've been, yeah.
And what does that look like? Do you do a presentation? Do you like a PowerPoint presentation?
Well, the chair of that commission has made a report directly to the city council, but he talked to them last year, I know that. I don't know if he has in all years past, but he did last year, and I think maybe the year before.
Yep, the 2 years ago there was a presentation. I don't remember last year if it was a presentation or if it was just spoken what the commission has done.
Yeah.
Environmental has done a couple presentations, like actual PowerPoint presentations before the commission, or before the council. So,
Okay.
Okay, yes, I recognize that as a responsibility.
Okay, and I'm putting that on myself as vice chair too. I just
Yeah.
think I'd like to see the commission, I know the council's talking about goals and they want commission and committee goals to align with council goals. There's a lot of discussion about goals. But I would like, as we talk about chair and vice chair, one of the things this commission needs to do is strengthen its relationship with the city council. And so anybody, myself included, raising their hand to be part of chair or vice chair, I think we need to just acknowledge that's going to be part of our extracurricular work this year.
Okay, so, yes, do we have any volunteers? Or are we ready to vote? Okay, we have the two motions before us. For the chair and vice chair, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Alrighty, we have a chair and a vice chair. The next item of regular business, where'd we go? Oh, okay. Conduct a public meeting on Pullman City Code, Chapter 17.109, short-term rentals. It says in the agenda at the December 10 special meeting, Planning Commission moved to have a public meeting on Pullman Civic Code 17.109, short-term rentals, to solicit public feedback. This meeting, the commission will take public comments. Attached is a memo. We do have a memo in our packet from Jeremy Moore, the building official, discussing short-term rentals in the Washington State Building Code. Do we have any comments from the staff?
No.
Okay. Okay, we're here to listen to the public, so how many people intend to speak to us? Okay, I'm not going to put a time limit on anybody, but please keep your remarks brief. And in particular, if one person says something that you agree with, the thing to do is just say, I agree with that, instead of repeating it. Okay. If you'll step up, you're going to have to sign your name and address on the roster. We do have a roster at the podium, don't we? Okay. You'll sign your name and... Oops.
All right. My name's Carl Olson, 220 Southeast Derby Street. Good to see you again. I wanted to start off by acknowledging a few things. I think it's really important that the city, when we address short-term rentals, acknowledge what is happening and what's not happening, because there's a lot of buzz around different things that are being communicated. So last night I was at the city council meeting. This was a discussion-oriented city council meeting, and there was things from the city council saying that, like, do we have to put, signs on every bedroom door? And there's miscommunication around what is necessary and how much money it's going to take and redoing electrical. And I want to be really clear that I think it's important that we focus in and actually understand what is being asked of us. I also think it's important to realize that the city, I don't think the city is trying to crack down. You're going to hear that term, crack down, and I don't think that that is a justified statement. If you look, I just want to acknowledge from Ariel's work and what RJ has been doing that they are opening it up into other residential zones. And so there is an acknowledgement of what is actually true, and I think we want to get as close as we can to the truth. So let this be a time for that. Now, I want to just kind of make a few points that I think, as I've been sitting in meetings with you all, spending wonderful hours together, just that I have come to a conclusion on. This is a statement I think that has been sent to you all. You guys have this statement. First one is a major issue that typically comes up when you hear this with the stigma of short-term rental is nuisance issues. And I just want to say, from my standpoint, is those nuisance issues have been basically by public records requests shown to be not true in the city of Pullman. So I think that is not an issue that I think that we should be discussing. There's also a staff cost issue. There's the discussion of the amount of money necessary to sufficiently fulfill the requirements for a staff member to do inspections and things like that, set at $200. That's been framed in a positive in terms of been reducing from 500. I think it is a positive that we are reducing that from the 500 from the current conditional use permit that was in place. I just want to point our attention to the fact that with the 2% lodging tax, as well as the 8% tax that's collected, 6.5% goes to the state, 1.5% comes to us. That's a 3.5% tax that every stay then is collected and automatically sent to Pullman. If you look at my rentals, this is personal data, so it's from, these are not owner-occupied Airbnbs, a couple 2-bedrooms that I have, and then some 4-bedroom ones that I have that have been operational for the last 7 years. But if I look at last year, and last year was a lower number, our numbers in the short-term rental market have been going down, but the 2 bedrooms average, this is approximate $600 a year that is going to Pullman. The bedrooms that were 4-bedroom average about $1,500. Okay, so if you add up all the rentals that in sum, like I would say that if it's a non-owner occupied rental, that we're ballparking $800 to $1,000 a door when we have these kind of places that is coming into the city on a regular basis. And I think it's important to note that this is an income generation thing for our city, provided that there's no nuisances. This is a really good thing for us to do. The next thing is a shift to safety issues. I think regardless of maybe how this is read, I wrote this at like midnight last night. If it came across harsh, I probably was just sleep deprived and things like that. But I want to say that safety is important, right? But we are regulated by the state on certain things that are just mandatory. If you have a rental, you have to be doing those things. And so within that risk assessment, we need to be clear on what that is. And there's some discussion on like fire. I think fire extinguishers are absolutely a good thing to have. When you get into stuff like wall-mounted lights, I want to highlight that there are barriers that we can put in place, that perceived barriers. There's another letter that was written for tonight that basically states people are stopping doing their Airbnbs with all the hubbub that's going on. And so there is at least perceived barriers. Even if these are small barriers, they are something that people have to go over. And so when we look at something like a wall-mounted light, honestly, it's not a huge deal. If I have to do it, I'm not going to sit here and whine and complain. But I would say that if we want to see Pullman increase the number of Airbnbs, that I think is a valuable thing, I think we should minimize as many of these barriers as possible. Does wall-mounted lights provide a safer scenario? I think we can all say yes, probably. But in my statement here, I say, well, if we change the speed limit from 65 to 60, is that safer? Yeah. But it comes with costs. And those costs are the perceived barriers that are in the place of the community for doing that. I think at this time, if you start looking at Pullman and what's happening here, the economics, we need to be looking, because there's no major nuisance issues, of what can we incentivize to bring in more dollars to the city, and consider that in the process. The last thing to mention is just the regulation. I put in a statistic from a public records request about this is the city, the police staff basically for the longest time have done records. We've discussed this previously. $15 fee for if you have a rental. If you look in 2019, there was 413, and then in 2023 there was 29. And why is that? Nobody was regulating that. I think these things are self-regulated, and what I mean by that is that you cannot run an Airbnb in Pullman if you have a 4.5 or below. Is that probably fair to say something like that? You just will not get the income necessary to be equivalent to a long-term rental. If we see those short-term rentals get deviated to long-term rentals, we get no income from that. And so we need to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And I think we need to minimize the staff effort on this, because I would like to see staff be putting their time towards other things, not regulating and monitoring what's happening in the Airbnb world. Let me just say that clearly this is statistics that I pulled last night from Pullman reports going back to 2016 to 2025, the most recent report, and this comes in building fees within the building department, the planning department, how the building fees are coming in. Back in 2016, we had $1.3 million from development that came into Pullman. Last year, for the first time, we were under, I think actually 2020 was close because of the pandemic, but we were under $500,000. So we're seeing a shift of $800,000 that's reducing the amount of income because of people unwilling to develop here, reluctance to invest in Pullman. If we're looking at that kind of thing, I perceive that we have an economic cliff that we're coming to, and we're talking about discussing going from 65 to 60 on the freeway when we need to be talking about the economic cliff that we're dealing with. My personal recommendation is to revisit the idea of going back to just defaulting to the state code and doing some sort of affidavit that'll acknowledges that you understand all those recommendations and the code that's compliant inside of that. And that if there are violations, that affidavit, then there's violation for being outside of that if you're not operating correctly. I honestly think we should do this for long-term rentals as well. That's my personal opinion. Last thing I'll say, and sorry for going long here. I read the memo from Jeremy. I think that there should be a discussion from the city council or from the planning commission around what triggers an occupancy use change. If you go to Spokane's code, there is a code in section 17C 316.040 that basically says in there if you have a registered, a conforming residential home, you do not need to do the change of use / occupancy as it's stated in there. This was not in the document that I sent to you last night. This is in there. But I think we need to be really careful about what actually triggers the occupancy use change, because the discussions on sprinklers and all that kind of stuff is built on the precipice or the premises that it's an occupancy change. I don't personally see that in the code. I am happy to acknowledge that I'm not the expert in the room on that, but as I've researched and looked through code, and it does seem that Spokane has a statement in there, it needs to be vetted by others, that if you have just a conforming residential structure, that it does not need to go through the the occupancy / use change form and then get reevaluated by IRC or IBC. With that, I will stop unless there's any questions.
Mr. Chair. The last thing you said, Carl, it sounds, and I don't know much about that either. It sounds like you're saying, so if it was like not residential and it switched to residential, that's where Spokane, for example, might look at that.
Correct. In Jeremy's letter, as he writes here, he's discussing this idea of the shift from basically non-transient to transient. And so because of that and the use that occurs there, since it's a shift in the occupancy use, that we need to reevaluate where this fits. And anytime there's an occupancy use change, that needs to happen. Now, there's been legal case that was coming from 2011 in Washington State around the state Supreme Court basically stating that a short-term rental is not a commercial business, it's a residential business. And so there's precedent for legal endeavors. This was, I could pull it, I didn't bring it up with me. There's data for that in terms of it establishes that short-term rental is not a commercial use, it's a residential use. That's from the state basically dictating this. This was a scenario in 2011. I think it went through in 2014 where people were told they couldn't have a short-term rental in a certain area, and then from that it was because it was going to commercial, but that was not the case. And in this case it was deemed that residential, so they could end up doing that. This other thing that I'm mentioning is around the usage. So when you're looking at the IBC and the IRC, those are two codes that basically when a new building is built, if you're in the IRC, there's less restrictions on it, right? It's not going to cost you as much, but the minute you trigger that you go into the IBC, there's more cost there. That's when we get into the sprinkler stuff and things like that with some caveats. So if there's a change of occupancy, as Jeremy's stating, that we need to reevaluate where it fits in here based off of the changes of those. What I'm saying is, what I perceive Spokane saying is that they do not consider it a change of occupancy if you have an existing residential structure that's conforming to that you have a duplex in a place that a duplex is okay and it's up to code. So as I read their statement, that's what I see there. And so that would limit like this re-triggering of having to reevaluate and do a whole occupancy use change and figure out if it's an IRC, IBC, all that kind of stuff. Again, I'm not a code expert, but as I've been reading this, this is what I perceive as when I search through the stuff, that it would not trigger an occupancy change and be more of efficient. We can just allow it and let it roll.
Thank you.
Carl, could you repeat what that, I tried to write down that number, 17C?
Section 17C.316.040.
And that was the city of Spokane.
City of
not
Spokane, their
Valley, Spokane County.
yeah,
City of Spokane.
City of Spokane, their Airbnb code. This is under the section specifically about short-term rentals in other zones, right? The one above it lists the same thing, but in this code, and I think this is the idea of if you were to try to put an Airbnb in a warehouse or something like that, they're saying if you put this Airbnb in a warehouse, then you would need to go through that change of use / occupancy. That's their wordings. Use and occupancy, I think you got to be really careful about the different distinctions between the two of those. But that's how it's phrased in there. Again, we could get some other expert opinions on that.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next person.
Thought it was really nice of the city council to wrap up their meeting just in time for this one to start. It was nice of them to vacate the premises. I think I saw them just while walking out as I was walking in. I'm joking. It's really great to have public comment at meetings like this. I'm always disappointed when the powers that be decide that they don't want to hear what we have to say. Not that I want to speak at every meeting or any meeting for that matter. But I think it is important. You got a guy that's really, really smart and thoughtful and concise with his thoughts. Carl he's always that way, and I always enjoy listening to him. And I would say that if what he suggested tonight was adopted by the city, I would support it 100%. But I was here about a year ago. I was a part of many meetings before then. I'm not as analytical when it comes to things like this as Carl is. I come from a completely different vision point. And then meetings with Ariel ad hoc around town and being involved. And I just want to say to everybody in the room, I'm really disappointed that I have to be here tonight. I really don't want to be here tonight. And I had said a year ago or so that there were two plans on the table. The analogy was one was like a prime rib dinner with mashed potatoes and creamed corn. Delicious, heavy. You might not feel so good in the morning, but it was a great meal. And the other plan was kind of like a Caesar salad with grilled salmon. Light, another wonderful meal. Maybe you feel a little bit better about yourself in the morning. And then I went on to say that to everyone here in this committee, I think the only person that was not here at that meeting was Mr. Hodge, was that I would support whatever plan, whatever proposal was approved by this council, by this commission, and by city council. And we did that. Freeman's were, I think, permit number 2. We did everything that we needed to do to get that permit. And we have a vision here in Long Beach at 965 Northeast B Street, historic Drucker House. Put a lot of money into that house, as I've said before, to make it the best experience for an Airbnb VRBO guest that it could possibly be. And we've been successful beyond our imagination in the few short years that we've been doing it. But could it have been better? Could the implementation of the plan been better? Now, staff interacted with me and other conditional use permit people, as we were under the, as you remember, we were under the conditional use permit. We were the first to get notified. And so we were also probably the first beta test of what they were sending out. And it was cumbersome. What was sent out initially was cumbersome. It was whatever the opposite of holding your hand is, that's what it would be. It would say, as an example, evacuation plan that will be posted in the rental. All right, well, where in the rental? What kind of evacuation plan? What is the minimum standard for the plan? The directions did say it needed to be on a piece of paper no smaller than this and no bigger than that. So we did a Google search, an AI search, and the AI search said, well, City of Pullman, short-term rental, it should be behind every bedroom door. So we had plans made via Etsy that cost us about $350 to do these. And every single plan has a dot on it that says you are here. Kind of like Mr. Anderson and I had an exchange in one meeting about reading the sign on the back of a hotel door. And on the back of the hotel door it says, we are here. But I was also at several other planning commission meetings where that was tossed about, that the signs needed to be on the back of the door and that the light needed to be at the front door. Well, what came out from city is exactly what staff said last night. So I'm watching the meeting and my first reaction was, that's not what I was told. My front door doesn't have a plug. So we had to do something about that. But then I went back this morning and looked at the email that Ariel sent me on May 15th of 2025. It said at least one emergency egress light with a battery backup will be located in the largest room on the egress route. It's exactly what you said last night, or I think that's actually what Jeremy said. But anyway, to the point, you then do a Google search to find out where these things should be, and it needs to be at the point of egress, okay? So another example would be I needed to have proof of insurance, okay? How much insurance? What kind of insurance? What's the standard? So I have $4.5 million of liability insurance on my property. Is that enough? Is it not enough? It's enough for me. Is it enough for the city? So I have to inquire. What's the minimum? $1 million. Well, then why is the city asking me for insurance if my house is on Airbnb and VRBO, and Airbnb and VRBO automatically give me $1 million of liability insurance for every guest? So why do I have to provide by insurance if I'm already having the insurance that satisfies the requirement? The city could say, give me your Airbnb or VRBO number and we'll verify that you are on those sites because we already know you're going to get $1 million of insurance, right? So the implementation of what was expected was cumbersome, to say the least. Working with the state of Washington for a business license, okay, sorry, government people. It's a government website. It sucks. So first it said I have to get a Washington, I contacted Ariel. Where do I go? What do I do? Second, third, fourth question asked after what's my name and my blood type is what's my FEIN number? Well, you only have that if you have a corporation, which I do. Not everybody has a corporation. So is there a way to do it as a sole proprietorship? Or one of the questions, if you will go back, was are you a business or sole proprietor? So I made sure that was sole proprietor. It should kicked off what's your social security number. It does not. I could not get past that. So if there is a way to get past that and I'm just an idiot, it would have been great if the city would have said, here's what you do to get a business license. They're going to ask you 50 questions about tanning salons, massage parlors, restaurants, every possible business you could think of, and when you get to the end, when they ask you what type of business you have to type it in. There's no drop-down list. So if you don't type in the right thing, nothing comes up. So I'm like, well, it's a short-term rental. And no, it's an STR. It's a vacation house. It's a rental. And you just keep typing things in until finally something comes up that you can click on. So that it was cumbersome at best. Now, that being said, that was May, so we're 7 or 8 months down the road, and maybe Ariel and staff has perfected that email that goes out to people, and now it's way easier, and I would expect that to be the case. I'm past that. I would say that the renewal process was really easy, right? It was an affidavit. I took it down to my local notary. I was in California. She emailed it to me, filled it out. I did the work, sent it back to her. I had my 2026 license the same day. So the process was simple to renew. The process to get the initial license was cumbersome, but we kind of just picked up our boots and said, we have to do this. This is our business. We have to have this. This has to work. So whatever we need to do, which is what I said in these meetings, and we did that. The confusion then goes to the home inspection. So watching last night's city council meeting in bed on Zoom with one eye closed, like Carl, I remember the inspector coming out, and he wanted to see the exit sign above the door, which I did because it was overkill, but there's nowhere in the paperwork that it said I needed an exit sign, but there, he asked for it. And then I have a 3-story house. So he wanted to walk around the house and look behind every single door and see my egress plan, which I showed you, with you are here in this bedroom, that bedroom, everywhere. And then we went down to the basement. There's no egress in the basement except for the stairs up, so there's one there. But it doesn't say in the directions that I got that that's what's needed, nor did they say that last night. So there's a disconnect between what was said here in this room. Obviously, it was prior to the plan being approved by City Council. What they said last night, what they published, and what the inspectors are doing. And so it's very confusing. If you Google it, the light has to be at the main egress, which is at the door, not in another room. Now, had I known that it could have been like they were going to sign off on a little $15 matchstick light that gets plugged in behind the wall somewhere, well, that would have been, I would have done that, you know, obviously. So the talk around town is this all needs to change. And if the costs need to be reduced for people that can't afford it, or for people whose Airbnbs only generate a couple $100s a year, but we don't make money anyway. My house doesn't make money. But we generate income, but it's not, we don't net a profit. All it does is to offset the cost of the house so that we can afford to live here. And if we're not able to run an Airbnb at that house, I have to sell it. Right? I'm gone. I left 80-degree weather last week to be here because I love it here. I don't want to leave. But decisions that are going to be made may force me to leave. Now, some people in town might be happy that I'm gone. So that gets me to this letter that Jeremy wrote that I read. Now, I must say that I've read IKEA instruction manuals that were easier to follow along than this letter. But I will say this, there's a lot of smart people in front of me here. And you know about that much of the code compared to what they do. You're way over your head in a combative battle against staff when it comes to code. They are experts. And that they can run circles around the city council, and unfortunately you guys, as smart as you are. And when I read this, and I didn't do the research that Carl did, but when I read this, what I read is Jeremy Moore, who I consider a friend. He's a good guy. He's been very fair to me, and I enjoy his company. And you can't fault a guy from Oklahoma. This, to me, says, go ahead and change the definition of what a short-term rental is, and then we're going to make you put water sprinklers inside your homes where applicable. And that effectively kills short-term rental business in our town. So this kind of ultimatum to me, this is go ahead and do what you want to do, send it to city council, let them do what they want to do. The brain power is here, we know that. And then after that, we get to do this. And that puts me out of business, puts them out of business, puts everybody out of business. That's a sad day for everybody. I'll close with this. My house in Kona on the Big Island, Hawaii, we spend a lot of time there. I haven't spent a lot of time there since we've been here working on the houses. But there's 250 reviews between Airbnb and VRBO. We're as close to a 10 out of 10 as you could possibly get. We've never had anything broken, stolen, ripped, torn, no wine spills. There might be some rum on the carpet, you never know. Nobody's ever complained, there's no issues. You run a good Airbnb, your people, you're going to attract good people. You're always going to land on a grenade once in a while. It's the way it is in the world. But the people who really care about short-term rentals run really good businesses, and they attract really good people. And I think it's for the benefit of Pullman. We're not full-time residents here, but last year I was here 9 months working on the other house. We're members of the Alumni Association, the Wine Club, we're regulars at Birch and Barley, Black Cypress, South Fork, the Coug. I got a mug, I'm in the mug club at the Coug. Spent a lot of money here in town. So you got to kind of factor all that in, like what's it worth, right? We spend a lot of money, we tip a lot. My wife tips a lot. And then I guess the last thing that just came to mind was this last summer, or this last February, we bought another house. Our neighbor, Jim Williamson, who we love to death, got dementia, and they had to move him to the west side. Really wonderful guy. And we loved him to death. But I told his family if they ever needed to sell, we'd love to buy it. If for nothing else, to preserve another historic home. The Phelps House, built in 1919. William Carl Krugel lived there. It was his last home before he passed away. We bought the house. Knob and tube wiring, unsafe electrical conditions in the attic, galvanized plumbing. It was infested with mice and rats. The stove that was there was a fire hazard waiting to happen. The stairs that went down into the basement were rickety and falling apart. The stairs into the back door, into the kitchen door, were sideways. And it was like even if you were sober, you felt like you had tied one on. They were just unsafe. My daughter lives there, but technically, by the rule book, it's a long-term rental. I paid $15. Nobody came out to the house. Now, I put $200,000 into the house, and it's really beautiful now. I love it. It's a gorgeous home. But I didn't have to do that. I could have just rented it the way I bought it, with $15 to put on the police roll, and no smoke alarms, no lights, no nothing. And I get it. Transient versus long-term, what's the term? What's the opposite of transient? No, okay, not transient. See, that's too easy. So anyway, I get the differential and the familiarity with it, but it's hard to digest as a layperson, you know. So anyway, I appreciate your time, and I hope you all make the right decision.
Doug, can I ask you a question? You have a lot of experience with the Kona property. You don't rent your California property out, right?
No.
No, so it's just Pullman and it. So you have a lot of experience between the two, and I'm curious of your opinion of if there were no ordinances, what would be different about your properties, and if there was a lot of ordinances, what would you do different based upon the city having ordinances?
Well, that's a great question. So Hawaii has no ordinances. You need to pay them $500 back when they came down on short-term rentals. They were like, you have to be licensed, and the property had to be in a certain area, not a single. They were phasing out on the Big Island, Hawaii. they were phasing out single-family residences as short-term rentals. So if you had a single-family residence, you knew that you needed to go through the process then and now. It was $500 plus a lot of paperwork. Like, there was people making a lot of money doing the paperwork for you because it was really like over the top. But beyond that, there was no requirements. So our house was just our house the way it is. But does it have smoke detectors? Yeah, it's got smoke detectors, and no, there's not lights and exit signs and egress. I mean, it's Hawaii. Most of the windows and doors are always open all the time. Like, there it is, right? We didn't have done anything. In Pullman, you guys all know that we completely remodeled Drucker House. We spent a lot of money remodeling that, including to Lucas at Artisan Electric, who hardwired all my smoke detectors and CO detectors in the house. They're all hardwired. The city came out, looked at them, and permitted them and everything. They're all done. And, between paying him to run wire through the whole house and then buying all the smoke detectors that were all hardwired, it's a pretty penny. And then I had to take them all out because I needed connected Wi-Fi. Now, in my house, I know every house is different, but in my house, if you fart in the kitchen, you can hear it at every single spot in the house. So it's a little overkill. But I did that. So I threw away perfectly good that the city of Pullman just approved me for. These are good. You're good. Throw them out. You need Wi-Fi connected. So some things are just ridiculous. And I think I think your average Airbnb short-term rental owner has enough pride in their home to maintain it in a safe fashion. I know that's not the answer the city's going to stand by because they're responsible for people who get hurt. But, maybe the guy that's got a room in his two-bedroom apartment that, like, the roommate goes to mom's house for the weekend and they rent it out for $50. Okay, maybe there's a safety issue there. I don't know. But Scott, to answer your question directly, Drucker House, when we got done building it and the city had signed off on all the work that we had done, it was as safe as a safe place could be. Unless a picture of how to get out of the house makes it more safe. It was just safe, and the city signed off on it. All my permits were signed off on. So it was, and maybe that's what the city, maybe that's what the echoes in the community are about, that it's like, what? Why do we have to do that? It's my home. And most of these, what would you say, just as a guess, maybe 70% of the homes in the city are owner-occupied that then rent out a room, or the people leave on a weekend and people come in. So there's only like 30%, and if there's only, in the city, there's like 40 or 50 short-term rentals that aren't motor homes and Quonset huts. Well, you're talking about 15 places that's what we're talking about here. All of this for like 15 homes. It's not 250 or 300 or 400 when you come right into the city, And the other thing is that the guidelines have created a gray market. So now we're on social media, the Coog social media sites and Instagram and Facebook. There's people on there that now say, I have a home in Pullman for Apple Cup, rent it, it's beautiful. And then you just call them and come in and rent it. They've completely circumvented y'all, everything. And the city gets zero in taxes from that. So there is a gray market. I did say a gray market would happen. Last year, a gray market did happen. So these are, as Carl said, part of the consequences of going from 65 to 60.
Okay, next person.
Non-transient.
If you can give us your name and address before you, okay, thank you. Say it into the microphone so that we have that on the record.
Okay, I'm Erin Sear, and my address is 435 Northwest North Street. I'm going to read so it's more concise for me. I want to begin by saying that I support reasonable, balanced oversight. However, the regulations as they are currently written feel less thoughtful governments and more like punishment toward a small group of residents who are trying to contribute positively to Pullman. Short-term rentals are not taking over the city, as we all know. According to Airbnb, there are 97 listings in Pullman. 71 are considered entire homes, but only 41 of those are actual houses. So the others might be an apartment or someone, renting their own place, their own apartment. Several of these addresses, though, of the 41 houses have multiple listings because parts of the home can be rented separately. And I know this because I manage 9 listings that only are 3 addresses, if that makes sense. So even the 41 is actually not that exact number. It's less than that. But many of the remaining listings fall under hotels, guest houses, or apartments. But despite this, it does feel as though the city has disproportionately targeted a very small population of responsible homeowners, people who invest in their properties, maintain them carefully, and care deeply about their neighborhoods. These are the people who should be supported, not restricted. Many of these people have said the new registration process and requirements are not worth the effort, work, or finances to make short-term rentals worth it anymore in Pullman. For me personally, this is not a side hustle. This is my business and a major part of my livelihood. Short-term rental income helps me support my family. I manage short-term rentals here. These regulations directly threaten that stability. But the impact doesn't stop with me. The short-term rentals I manage support local jobs. Every home I manage is cleaned by a single mother or mothers who need flexible work because they lack childcare options. Some are able to bring their children with them, and these rentals also support local repair technicians, landscapers, snow removal services, and handymen. This is a small but important local ecosystem, people who rely on consistent business just as I rely on them. Short-term rentals are part of Pullman's economic engine. Hotels simply cannot meet the demand during major WSU events like Parents Weekend, football games, graduation. But when visitors can't find a place to stay, they end up in Moscow or the Valley, which hurts our local restaurants, shops, small businesses, and even the university. Short-term rentals fill a critical gap that benefits the entire community. Many of us who host are doing everything right. We maintain safe, clean, well-managed homes, bring visitors to Pullman, support local jobs. We care about being good neighbors, yet these regulations treat us as though we're a problem that needs to be solved here. Because of my work, I'm closely connected with many Airbnb hosts in Pullman, and I want to share the level of stress and uncertainty these regulations have created for those people. Throughout this year, I've heard of numerous homeowners who say it's simply not worth it to continue their short-term rentals. Many want to shut down, and even I've tried helping them work through the process of registering, and it has been difficult. I might be a little bit more tech savvy than some people, but getting your business license has been very complicated for a lot of people. And some of these are older people who've just decided it's not worth it, I'm not doing this anymore, and are shutting down their short-term rentals. I'm asking if it is possible to figure out a simpler plan that communicates support of short-term rentals and a flexibility that helps people keep their short-term rental businesses and helps build tourism in Pullman. This fall was already slower than any other fall we've had. I've been doing this for about 4 years, and this was the lowest in 4 years this year. So already, things for short-term rentals in Pullman feel very tight, people are not sure if it's worth it financially anymore to do this. These new regulations only add on top of that. And so unfortunately, due to low, football game attendance and new regulations for Airbnbs, it really, I believe, is going to push short-term rentals to cease to exist here. Based on discussions at the December meeting that I attended, it sounds like even more financial burdens may be coming, and that's with the internal sprinkler system. But all of this is pushing responsible homeowners towards shutting down their business entirely, sending the message that Pullman is a difficult place to operate a short-term rental. While some argue that maybe other cities do it this way, I do think Pullman is unique. Our tourism patterns are very different, our economy is different, and we have the opportunity to grow our local economy and keep visitors here. Yet these regulations create barriers that discourage participation and lead to burnout. I think policies should be based on real data and real impacts, not assumptions or comparisons to other cities. In my opinion, the data here doesn't justify targeting this small group of responsible homeowners. I also want to address and come back to the concerns raised at December meeting regarding the potential requirements for internal sprinkler systems. If that becomes a requirement, I truly believe it would eliminate short-term rentals in Pullman altogether. That would not make Pullman safer, it would just simply send visitors and revenue to Moscow instead or other places. So I'm asking the council to consider these regulations and to work with people most affected so we can arrive at a policy that is fair, balanced, and economically sensible, one that protects neighborhoods without harming the residents, families, and small businesses who rely on short-term rentals. Thanks.
Aaron, I'm curious, all of the places you manage are in Pullman proper, within the city limits?
Yes. One is just outside the city limits.
So it'll be county?
Yeah,
Is-
but it's,
Do you feel any different between the county one you run and?
well, yeah, and yes, for sure. He doesn't have to go through all this.
Okay. Do you have any association with even further out, say a surrounding community?
What, like outside of Pullman?
Well, I'm just thinking probably not Washington, but it could be, maybe Albion, Moscow.
Yeah, I've been connected to, I've helped some in Moscow before. But I just, personally, I've actually said no to helping, like, long-term those because of just distance for me and wanting to stay in Pullman. But, yeah, I think Moscow Airbnbs, I know, are growing pretty quickly, and they don't have any regulations. And so, you know, a lot of the homes this year, I've wondered if, that are typically booked for things are not, because it is growing a lot more in Moscow. And I've wondered if they are getting some of that business that has been, you know, more common in Pullman. Because in Pullman, we have, summer is ironically like one of the busiest times of Airbnbs. I don't know if anyone knew that, but summer is for sure the busiest time. It's a lot of construction companies. It's all the students are coming in regularly for the preview weekend or for the freshman orientation. And so we've always been full of those people, but I've seen this last year that go down. And I know that they're still happening. They're still building stuff all the time, but I wonder if Moscow, and I know Lewiston gets a lot too, so.
Do you have a feel for all about the safety of your one out of the city limits versus, and maybe if you know of the Moscow ones, I'm just curious, those places don't have ordinances, right? They
Right.
the safety is
I mean, the
really-
one that I do in Pullman, it is 5-star reviewed place
Yeah.
with 30 plus days or so. I mean, it is an impeccable place. It's on Kitzmiller Road, which is just, outside. But it is, yeah, it's one of the best ones, I think, yeah.
Yeah. What about Moscow? Any feel for?
No, I'm not.
Not as
I'm
familiar.
Not too sure, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Anything else? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Does anybody else want to speak to us? Anybody changed your mind? Okay, we'll close the public comment part of this meeting. Does anybody on the commission have any comments?
I wonder if the planning, can you hear me? No? No, you can hear me? All right, I wonder if you guys could share the checklist that you send to short-term rentals. I don't believe we've ever seen that.
It's on the city website.
Okay,
We have our instructions for how to apply.
okay. And it's evolved over the last year?
In what way?
Like more defined requirements?
I mean, it says you need like your evacuation plan that shows exits to doors and windows, your floor plan needs to show your smoke detectors, carbon, fire extinguisher, egress light. So it just states what is required for your application. And then at the bottom, if you have questions regarding this application, please contact staff.
Okay. And that's the $500 fee?
Short-term rentals is It's 200.
Okay,
Anything with our hearing examiner, so our conditional use and our variances are 500.
right. Okay. I did like the idea of just providing the Airbnb or VRBO documentation to the city. It verifies that you're covered for all of their requirements, which is,
We've had people with their application submit that page that shows, we're on Airbnb, here's where Airbnb says that they provide this coverage. So we accept that as part of the insurance. And when people ask, we do tell them. But we can't just assume everyone is using Airbnb. Yes, I've been told more times over that that is the main platform. But the state law says it's $1 million of liability, so we just have to say, you need $1 million in liability.
and would it be true that if we followed a similar procedure to City of Spokane for the definition of transient versus non-transient occupancy codes, Jeremy Moore would follow our recommendation if the city council agreed?
We would need to reach out to City of Spokane to see what they define as conforming.
Okay.
If that's already defined in their code, we can look into that. But just looking at that single section, conforming is not defined, so.
I just want to follow up on where I would find this on the city's website. So there is a PDF. Are we talking about the PDF that's information required, application materials, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Is that what or is there more information besides that?
So on the city website, if you're under planning, one of our tabs is like application maps, brochures, and under resources, we have all of our various instructions. So there's
Right, okay.
instructions for short-term rentals.
And it's just that one PDF document. There's nothing else in addition to that, right?
Correct.
Okay. I would like to follow up a little bit on changes, maybe changes is a strong word, but evolution in some of the requirements. Like if we just we heard tonight about posting an exit plan on the back of every single door, that they understood that was a requirement. Was that ever a requirement that was communicated, that it did need to be on every single door?
I've never told anyone that. If they submit documentation showing that they have one in every room, the inspector is going to verify that they have one in every room, because that is what it was documented in what they've sent.
Would you ever reach back out to that person and say, hey, you went above and beyond, you don't actually need to do that? Would you provide somebody that guidance?
No.
No?
Normally, it's just what they submit, and we're like, okay, good for them.
And last night at the city council workshop or study session, I watched that last night. I thought it was actually very, very well done by your department and staff and by Darren Jones. I would encourage anybody else, commissioners or the public, to watch that video because I think it was quite informative. But I learned a few things. Maybe they were misperceptions on my part, but like one of the things that was discussed was that that exit sign, and last night it actually said that it could be in like a 3-ring binder in the unit. That was new to me, that it didn't actually have to be like posted on the door. Is that correct?
So it's in a conspicuous location. So if you provide a binder of all the various things that you provide, and people look through it, I would say, if you want people to look at it, it probably shouldn't be hidden in a binder, but I also look at them when I go places. So I am that person who looks at the back of the hotel door.
Because
It's
I guess
just
I'm
where
trying
it
to get-
can be seen. We don't define conspicuous location. Every dwelling is different, so we can't just say it needs to be here, because it might not work in every location in that spot.
But does the city have a policy, or is it up to each individual inspector? So if I had one inspector came out and I had it in a 3-ring binder sitting on the coffee table, one inspector, is it possible that one person would say, no, it has to be posted in a conspicuous location, and I don't consider that 3-ring binder a conspicuous location, so I want that posted on the door? Is there a subject to interpretation here?
Not that I know of, but I'm unsure.
I think
We've talked
that
with the inspectors enough about
Yeah,
what we're looking for and how we interpret our code. They're not in Title 17 like we are. They're in Title 2, well, they're not even, Title 2 pretty much says Washington State Building Code. So they're in the various, all the different binders of code that they have. So we have talked with them about what we expect that they are looking for.
Okay. I think that's very challenging for people, though, when we heard tonight about misinformation about requirements, whether it's self-inflicted or whatever. It is challenging when that type of information isn't really out there or isn't consistent. I think it's challenging, again, it might not be the best process if somebody, let's accept the fact that maybe they misinterpreted the intention of the code, and so they understood that they would need to put signs on the back of every single door. They did that, it was accepted, the inspector actually came out and then looked at every single door. You can see where somebody would say, well, this is what I had to do, and that perpetrates an incorrect understanding of the code, right? And so now we have misperception out there. It's concerning to me that we would let something like that happen. That seems like not a helpful thing for the city to do. That's concerning to me. And so the reason I bring that up is if we're going to revise our code, I think we need to eliminate those types of opportunities for things to go south, go sideways like that. If we're going to have a requirement, then I think we need to detail that requirement so it's really pretty crystal clear and it's not subject to interpretation. Yeah, I guess I'll stop there. I did think last night was very good. There was some very good information. It's the first time I've heard exactly what fire extinguisher the city wants. After talking about this for a year and a half and asking that question multiple times, what is the requirement for the fire extinguisher? Last night was the first time somebody actually said, here's what we expect. So I appreciated that. It's late in coming.
I was also actually a little bit surprised at what I heard from City Council last night. And part of it was, I heard him say that the inspection only includes the 5 points. And I don't know whether that's going to be consistently thing. And I think that worries a lot of people, right? If you're going to have an inspection of the house, what is going to be inspected? And I don't think that was clear at all until last night when I was listening to the city council meeting. And then it was very clear. They basically said there are these 5 things. It should take less than 15 minutes. It shouldn't be a problem at all. I mean, and that's not the way that I actually understood it at all. And so, again, I guess I'm just saying that it was really interesting to listen to what was said last night because it was a good interpretation. And then, so I was feeling pretty good. Actually, I thought that we were moving in a good direction. I thought that seemed reasonable. And then I get this letter from Jeremy, which basically says, I mean, it's scary, right? For example, specific short-term rental definitions that end up in land use permitting workflow could result in the use that violates the IRC allowed uses. I mean, that seems like a threat. It's like, and I don't know what we're doing. I mean, what are we doing that's going to make it so that we're not under IRC and we're under IBC? And it's a huge concern amongst anybody who's running a short-term rental because nobody wants to put a sprinkler system in their house. And so this letter, frankly, is, I mean, to me, was super scary. And I don't understand what it means, even. I mean, that whole sentence doesn't make any sense to me, except for it's kind of an obtuse threat that we're gonna give you building code unless you do what we want. But it doesn't say what's wanted. I don't know what we're supposed to do based on this. And so I think we need clarification on that. I mean, because I don't think there's anybody on this commission that wants to have people with short-term rentals have to have sprinklers in their house. Unless they have like 15 people, 15 rooms or whatever, and they're really a hotel. But I don't think that wasn't ever our purpose. And our purpose never was actually to make short-term rentals hard. Our purpose was actually to make short-term rentals something that were legal and sanctioned in the city. And so the fact that now it's perceived as hard seems that's the problem. That's the problem we're having with this code. And maybe it is all perception. But it seems, I mean, this doesn't seem like perception to me. This letter seems threatening and problematic.
Follow up maybe to the discussion about the information that's on the website and what Angela was asking. Jeff mentioned that Jeremy, the building inspector, last night talked about the inspection and the 5 things. He talked about his checklist. Where is that checklist? Where can the public find that checklist used by the inspectors?
It's in our online permitting system. I don't have an actual available one, but it's the smoke detectors, carbon, fire extinguisher, like that.
Okay.
Okay, with regard to sprinklers, it's my understanding when we talked about categories last month, that one of the things we wanted to do was establish categories so that, in a way that would avoid sprinklers. Okay? So that's why we have owner occupied with 2 or fewer bedrooms. That does not require, that's within the residential code, which would not require sprinklers. Am I right?
Correct.
Okay. Owner occupied with 3 to 5 bedrooms. With the, let's see, with the potential to change the terminology back to boarding house, since that does not appear in the International Residential Code. Okay, at any rate, one way or the other, as we, it's my recollection that what we wanted to do was establish categories so that owners of short-term rentals would know this is the category I have to fit in to avoid sprinklers. Now, has the staff made any sort of recommendation to the city council with regard to categories?
No.
Okay, is that coming back to us at some point? Yes, I take that to be yes. Let the minutes show.
Yes.
Okay, then I think that's the point where we really need to grapple with the whole idea of sprinklers and make sure that we establish categories that will allow people to have short-term rentals without falling into the International Building Code. Okay.
Well, can I follow up on that?
Sure.
Because what I understood Jeremy's memo, and I'm looking for Ariel or RJ to clarify this, since Jeremy's not here. What I understood Jeremy's memo to be suggesting was that if we did categories, like we kind of brainstormed category 1, 2, 3, 4, if you did that, you're very much at risk of falling under this building code sprinkler thing. You really don't want to do that. That's what I read he said pause and reconsider doing categories. Is that correct? Okay. So,
Wait a minute. For the benefit of the people who are writing
Yes.
the minutes, the staff said yes.
okay. So we're back to, and this is so dang confusing to me, so I apologize that I'm dense on this, but we're back to, we don't want to have a bunch of categories. We want to have either you're an STR or you're not. We want to keep it a little more simple. Is that correct? Kind of like what the state does.
Yeah, excuse me. I think you're on the right path there, Brent.
Okay.
To sum up Jeremy's last paragraph on his memo, what he's trying to say, what he's saying is that there are categories of short-term rentals which would force certain requirements. And we're trying to stay away from that, because I think we can all agree
Yeah.
that installing sprinklers is cost prohibitive. I think we all agree on that.
Okay.
So we're trying to avoid that.
Yes. Okay.
Right. then there are certain categories as described in building codes in which you cannot avoid that.
Right.
So we're trying to not go into that territory.
Okay, perfect. That's what I understood from too. So we want to be, well, stop using the term category. Can we use the term you're in or you're out? You're an STR or you're not? Can we use that for the sake of discussions?
You can make exemptions.
Say that again?
You can make an exemption.
And make an exemption. Okay, so you're an ex-STR or you have an exemption. And I think what we discussed is one of the exemptions would be if you were owner-occupied, 2 bedrooms or less. We'll work on that words a little bit. That might not be perfect, but general, right? That's kind of what Washington State does. That would be an exemption. So this is where I get tripped up. If you're exempt, so you're not an STR, you're in no man's land, what happens to you? Like specifically, I have a 4-bedroom house, I'm going to rent out 2 bedrooms on Airbnb, and I live there. What am I, and what do I have to do? Can you answer that question?
In terms of the state of Washington?
And, well, let's just say in terms, okay, yeah, sure, yeah, in terms of the state of Washington, and then in terms of the city.
Okay, in the state of Washington, you have to follow the RCW, right? There's
Okay.
some things that you would not need to do. I don't want to go over everything in the RCW, but there's some things that you would not need to do and some things that you would.
Right.
If our end result of our code states that if you are not a short-term rental, as prescribed by the state of Washington, then the city may very well not require anything. May not require a license or an inspection or anything of that nature, as
Okay.
long as you are owner-occupied and rent 2 or fewer rooms, right? So there would be nothing required.
Nothing, okay. Okay,
That's clearly an option,
all right.
right? That would be not, how about I'm trying to find the right words here. Would not move that structure into any additional building code requirements,
Okay,
right? So that's like the easiest level.
Yeah.
That's like your green belt if you're in karate, right? Like that is just, you're here, here's your participation, you're in, right? And then it escalates from there.
okay. I think I finally get it. I think I've been struggling because typically you always are something, right? You're a single-family home, or you're a duplex, or you're a town. I mean, we have lots of different things, but you're something. There's a label that gets put on you no matter what you are. And so I struggle with this idea that you're exempt. You do not exist type thing. You're exempt, but that's
Here's a good analogy for you. The state of Washington, if you have revenue under a certain dollar amount,
yeah,
you don't need to file business taxes. Or suppose that you are a low-income earner, you're a part-time student, and you only work 10 hours a week, you don't have to file taxes.
okay,
Right, so there's your exempt.
Okay.
Because you're under that level. Now, once you go above it, then there's going to be some requirements. You're going to need to file taxes with the state. You're going to have to do a tax return if you exceed the minimum.
okay.
So that's how I would look at it,
That makes sense.
right? So if we come to the conclusion, the Planning Commission, the council, staff, everybody's on board with owner-occupied 6+ months a year, which, side note, that would be difficult to verify, but Spokane's got a good system for that, then we could go that route,
Okay,
right? I still have concerns about safety because hypothetically, if someone is there 6+ months out of the year, but they're not there for a football game, that to me is the same as if they live in Texas because they're not there. And there's a certain minimum level of safety that I think should be met because they are transient in nature, which is what Jeremy tries to hit on in his notes.
okay. Yeah, I understand there's implications for that. I'm just still trying to wrestle with that whole definition thing, but I think you got it for me now. So exempt is what we want. We want to have, you're an STR or you're exempt. We don't want to have 4 categories. You don't seem convinced.
I think one thing that needs to be pointed out, though, because it's been brought up, is the business license, and that doesn't have anything to do with city code. And if you're exempt, you still need a business license, you still need to go through that process, and you actually still need to pay taxes as well, right? I mean, you have to pay taxes, you will. Even if you're exempt from city code, you still, according, I mean,
Correct.
still the Washington Code says you have to pay taxes.
I actually
So-
talked to the Department of Revenue for a long time because I was really confused about this. This is many months ago. And they kind of hung their heads and they kind of apologized, but they said, yeah, this is the rule. This is the law. If you have rental income, you have to have a business license. There's an exemption if your rental income is long-term and you're not a business. You're exempt. But there is no exemption if you're less than 30 days. They said it's convoluted, we're sorry. And you have to have a business license, and you will have to file quarterly taxes with the Department of Revenue. Now, if you do it through an Airbnb platform, they will collect and remit all your taxes for you. You will have to file a $0, assuming you're below the threshold for B&O taxes, which might be like $490,000. But as long as you don't have to pay B&O taxes because you're low enough, which everybody in Pullman would be, you will file a $0 tax return quarterly. I said, really? They said, yeah, we're really sorry, and we really hate processing them, but we process a lot of $0 tax returns. After you've done it for a year, and they're all zero, you can apply to do your $0 tax thing once a year, annually, instead of quarterly, but for the first year, you gotta do it every 4 years. So that's the state law. It's not a Pullman thing. You gotta do it. Do a lot of people not do it? Yeah, a lot of people don't do it. Because the Department of Revenue doesn't spend a lot of time and money going after and prosecuting people for failing to pay their $0 quarterly taxes. But it is the law. So yeah.
Okay. I don't want to get too far afield. The issue is zoning code, and the issue is specifically short-term rentals in the zoning code. But I do want to point out that we are not going to do anything that's going to violate the building codes, building standards. We're not going to exempt somebody from sprinklers if the building codes require under the circumstances specified. Anyway, anybody else have anything? Okay, so I'll ask the staff, where are we going from here? Yeah, I know you guys have to make a presentation as of the end of March to the city council, so where are we going from here? Isn't that right?
We weren't told anything about another presentation by the end of March.
They did it last night.
Oh, I see. So that presentation last night is what the council wanted?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I know at
Okay.
one point, Mayor Benjamin made a comment that something could take a couple months, so it might not be until March.
Oh, yes.
So I just wanted to make sure, like, there's nothing set in stone. What we did last night was the request from council that was supposed to be done by March of this year.
Okay, so, well, then I'll ask the commission, where are we going from here?
And then last night, in case people have not watched last night, and again, I'd really encourage you, it's worth your time. It's the very end of a very, very long study session, so you can fast forward until you see the four of them sitting at a table, and that's when you pick it up. But it would be worth, it'd be anybody up here, or anybody who does an STR, or anybody who's thinking about an STR, it'd be worth your time in watching that.
It starts at hour 3, in case anyone's
Hour
wondering.
3, okay, yeah, but it's worth it. It was well done. But one of the things that came out last night is they had a great discussion, but city council did not take any action. They couldn't because it was a study session. But even beyond that, they did not direct staff to do anything at this point, because they know we're doing this, and they want the public process to play out, and they want us to be able to come up with recommendations also. Staff might have recommendations, we might have recommendations, city council will consider all of it, but they specifically kind of put a pause to making any changes until we do our thing.
Okay, what's our thing?
Well, I think we should, what I would recommend is that we try to do the definition as a draft, the definition being the exemption. Once we figure out exactly how that works and maybe kind of proof test that a little bit, then we could talk about requirements for anything that's not exempt. But I think we got to kind of start with that exemption thing, get the language, make sure we're all in agreement on what we're exempting and what we're not. Because the devil's in the details, like anything. And then we could talk about requirements, and we could talk about smoke detectors and fire and egress lights and signs for the stuff that's not exempt.
Okay. Okay, I'm not sure what we're exempting. I understand owner occupied 1 or 2 bedrooms, 1 or 2 rooms to rent, and I understand that the definition of room is renting a specific part of the house. So if you're renting, for example, family room, bedroom, bathroom, that's 1 rental room. Yeah. So, okay, so under state law, if a person is renting just 1 or 2 rooms, that's not covered. That's not a short-term rental under state law. Is that right? That's under the definition of state law. Okay, staff is answering yes. Okay, so I think the first question is, do we want to regulate those 1 or 2 rooms?
Well, I think
In much the same way that it's, in almost exactly the same way that's laid out in the code today as we understand the requirements such as the diagram, the things that have come up over and over, the diagram, the type of fire extinguisher, the need for egress lights and so forth. Do we want to regulate 1 or 2 rooms rented as short-term rentals?
I think you're jumping one step ahead, though, John, because our last meeting, we talked about the definition, and at least what I wrote down and what's in our minutes and stuff is slightly different than the state definition. It wasn't word for word with the state definition. We talked about that because we talked about it didn't necessarily need to be the owner. It could be a permanent resident. So we expanded that, right? And so I think we need to really dial those things in because they have some different implications. The state definition is all based on the dwelling unit. We talked about it being the property, which could contain more than 1 dwelling unit. So, but those are critical differences, right? They're huge. If I own a duplex, it's 2 dwelling units on 1 property. Under the state definition, I would be exempt for the upstairs where I lived if I wanted to do some bedrooms, but the other duplex in the bedroom would not be exempt because I don't live there. But we said, well, maybe we'll consider it as the property, and we'll say you could be exempt for the basement duplex as well. That's what we discussed. I'm not saying that's what we 100% agreed to, but we need to talk about those implications if we're going to deviate.
John, I have in my head what I think we should end with, right? So I've been involved in this long enough and talked to enough people and heard enough testimony that I think I know where we need to get to. That's great, because when we started, I didn't know where we should end up at all. But I do now. And I think that this commission is now educated enough where when I propose something, you can banter against me to make sure that I thought it out correctly, right? Because you're going to hit me up with, that don't make sense to me, or did you really think about this flavor of how that's going to look if you do it? So that's great, right? I feel a lot better. I want to make sure, though, that as we talk about very specific details, that we don't lose sight of what it is we're trying to achieve. And I think that is ultimately important. We had 3, Aaron, Carl, and Doug, that came up and talked about the benefits of this small business that is in Pullman. And I think short-term rental operators are small businesses, much like many of the other businesses that we have in Pullman. The lumber yard is one, right? The lumber yard had a big article written about them as going out of business. That's a shame, right? As many businesses went out of business in Pullman, we have operators, business owners going out of business because of the ordinances we put in place. And I think we should look at what can we do to have that not happen. We don't have a problem. We're not fixing a problem here, right? And I would feel incredibly different about this if we were fixing a problem. If we had legitimate complaints about these businesses operating in Pullman and we needed to do something to fix the problem. But we're not fixing a problem. We're putting an ordinance in place to not fix a problem, and we're putting people out of business because we did it. We should try and that's what my North Star is, right? No matter what details we work out on this, we should be supporting these businesses to be in Pullman because, as it's been explained to us, not only does it provide jobs in Pullman, it provides revenue in lodging tax. It also supplies other operators, people who shovel snow, do landscaping, do cleaning. Those all people are all employed. But additionally, those who stay in Pullman likely are spending additional money in Pullman. It's good for the entire community. And I said, if we had a big problem, we should be fixing it. We don't have a problem. Clearly, we don't have a problem. And so we have to keep this North Star in our sights that what we're doing with these ordinances needs to almost encourage people to do these businesses, not discourage them. And clearly they're being discouraged. Even if you say that the speed limit was reduced from 65 to 60, we knocked a bunch of drivers off the road because they were irritated. Should they? I don't know, but they did. So the guiding light is, what can we do to make sure that we're doing something that puts Pullman in a position where we support these businesses and almost encourage them to open up instead of shutting down?
We are getting to the point of rehearing the whole short-term rental issue. And as a part of that, I have reread all of the letters that we got originally that I could find right away. You might very well be correct that we don't have a problem, but there is a perception of a problem, and you might very well be correct that those people are not making a legitimate complaint. But there is a perception of a problem, and we had people write to us and say, ban short-term rentals in Pullman altogether. We had people write to us and say, ban short-term rentals altogether in R1 neighborhoods. They will ruin the neighborhoods. They have already ruined part of my neighborhood. We had people say that. You might very well think that they had no legitimate complaint. That's a perfectly good conclusion. But in my mind, we have to respond to those people. And I'm not saying that we need to regulate short-term rentals to the point of pushing them out of business. I don't believe that for a second. I also, however, don't think that we can regulate in the city of Pullman in a way that ignores building codes, state regulations, and so forth. And that's where I'm headed, that we need to be consistent with state regulations and with the building codes, and we need to be able to satisfy, well, probably will never satisfy people who say ban short-term rentals altogether, but we need to be able to say to people, we did what we could to ensure that short-term rentals are safe and good for the neighborhood. That's where I think we're headed. And I do want to emphasize again, we had letters from people who urged us to ban short-term rentals, who urged us to ban them in R1 neighborhoods. Whether or not you agree with what they said, and I know a lot of people don't, that's what they said. And we need to be responsive to people in Pullman who wrote to us. All of the people who wrote to us for this whole process, the whole 60-plus letters we got originally, and now we're apparently going back through this all over again. We still need to bear in mind all of those people who wrote to us. So.
I accept that, John, and you're right. I mean, and I have a record of it, and I have a count and all that. So I'm not discounting people who wanted to ban them or wanted very, very restrictive regulations or were concerned about nuisance situations that could arise. I hear that not a single person came and said that and had a dialogue with us. They don't need to, they can write letters, but there's nobody that actually came and testified. I do give a little more credibility to people who are willing to stand up there and have a dialogue. But I just want to challenge you on one thing, John. Like somebody who has an Airbnb on Kitzmiller Road, just outside the city of Pullman, they are still compliant with building codes, and they are still compliant with the state of Washington. They haven't violated anything there, right? So I don't know that a city has to do something above and beyond or anything. I mean, right? I mean, I don't think we have any evidence to say that the Airbnb on Kitzmiller Road is in violation of building codes or state law. So I think you could do something in Pullman and not be in violation and yet not have something in Chapter 17 at all.
I serve on the City of Pullman Planning Commission. I'm responsible for what happens in the City of Pullman with regard to planning and zoning. What the county does is up to the county.
Oh, I agree. I'm just saying.
Well, that's my response. You challenged me, and that's my response.
I'm just saying you implied that if you don't have code, then you would maybe, okay, I'll withdraw that.
I guess I want to comment on this too. I mean, I agree there were a minority of letters that said that they would like to ban them or not have them in R1. We have nothing in our code that addresses their concerns at all. There's nothing that we've done that actually will make them happy. And so we're just going to make regulations because to say that we did something, I mean, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I mean, I agree we need to, the building codes, all the codes need to be, that are state codes need to be followed. But there is no reason why the city of Pullman needs to put excess codes above that. And I don't think that addresses any of the issues that the people who don't want short-term rentals are bringing up. I mean, nuisance, it doesn't address that. It doesn't address the fact that we're allowing them in R1. And those seems to be what I saw in those letters.
John, yeah, if you talk about categories, I think I would say extreme minority of the letters, right? It was a very, very small amount. Nobody came to talk to us, and I would love to have that dialogue with them. I hope they weren't scared away by anyone here wanting to just further understand their position. But when a letter's written, I don't get that opportunity. I can only read the letter. And the other thing is they can put anything in the letter. For example, I remember specific. Now, I wrote a letter to this commission back in, I was traveling and you all were going to do a meeting in January. And so I reread every single letter at that point and put a lot of time into writing to my fellow commission members who were going to have to vote on this. And so I went back recently and I read that letter, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, I re-educated myself on a bunch of the research that I did to put into that letter. And one of the things that was clear to me is that even in those that were opposed to having short-term rentals in their neighborhood, there wasn't any substance of saying, I had a complaint, or I would have complained if I just knew how to complain about a short-term rental incident. But there wasn't any of that. In fact, the letter from, and I don't remember his name, the professor from WSU, this will be a little bit controversial, but it almost seemed a bit racist, right? It was like saying, hey, I've heard of this bad race that might move to my neighborhood, and I don't want them. Do you have any evidence that they're bad? No, but I'm pretty sure if they moved here, it would be bad. And I think, but there's no substance behind that comment, right? It was just a thought that if it happened, it might be bad. And I think, gosh, I would love to, I'm sure he would not accept that from his students when they're writing an argument against something that he asked them to write an argument about, but yet he did it. He said, I just think this would be bad. All right, well, I don't want to discourage people from writing letters, but when I critically analyzed all of the input that we had gotten up till then in an effort to really form an opinion, certainly all of us have some kind of an opinion on some subject before we get influenced by others. But I wanted to be as fair as I could be and let the letters influence me. And so as I went through and reread them, that one struck me as I'm sure it would be bad if it happens, but I have no evidence to support it, none. And so it's hard for me to give much substance to that kind of letter. And then he didn't show up for me in any of our public comment sections, did he show up for any kind of discussion about it. So when I say that we didn't have letters negatively against substance, that's what I'm saying, right? That it was hard to give me them a lot of credibility. We had some additional letters tonight, all in support of STRs, none opposed. We had 3 speakers tonight, all in favor of STRs, none opposed. It continues to build, right? That I am almost begging for this person to come and talk to us that is incredibly negative on STR so we can have a meaningful conversation with them. But they don't, right? There's a few letters out there with no substance behind them. And so that's where I stood when I wrote the letter a bit over a year ago to this commission because I couldn't be here. And not much of my opinion has changed, although I've probably firmed up my opinion more, right? I'm more solid in my conviction than I was at this point a year ago.
Anybody else?
So I wonder, it looks like we need to do the definitions. I wonder if Jeremy can Jeremy provide us with some guidance for definitions that will steer people in the right direction? Obviously, we're steering toward like an exemption for the, owner-occupied 2 bedrooms or less. But if he could guide us on that, so we're not triggering fire sprinkler requirements, and it sounds like most of the short-term rental owners are open to having some sort of process for an application, but maybe making it more defined and less onerous.
I will have Jeremy put together another memo
Yeah.
that specifically addresses the 4 general definitions, the 4 categories that we had coming out of the December meeting, and what each of those definitions would require, if any,
Okay.
so that we would know exactly where each definition stands in the building codes.
I don't think that we were trying to complicate this. I think we were unwilling partners in it, or unwitting partners, as it were.
As I've had many conversations with Jeremy, as you could imagine, on this topic, the original definition was designed to avoid complications.
Right.
I want to make that super clear, right? It was not meant to confuse or put short-term rental units into a category that would be overly expensive and cost prohibitive. It was designed to do the opposite, to make things as simple and as easy as it could be. And Jeremy really, I think he hit on that quite well last night in his presentation. So I want to clarify that for anybody who may be listening now or later, that the definitions are designed to make it easier, not more difficult. If we wanted to go the other direction and make it difficult, goodness, we could certainly do that, right?
Yeah, I know.
And that's
communities.
opposite of what we're trying to do as staff. Like, there's been a lot of comments, I'll go off on my tangent now. There's been a lot of comments about staff putting barriers up, being difficult, and in fact, we try to do the opposite on everything that we do. We try to be as helpful and provide assistance as much as we can. We welcome people to come in, to call, to email. We will assist them going through the process on our permit portal online. We have the ability to do that at the front counter now. So we can assist in a number of ways. We have free pre-application meetings if people are completely confused. And I'll be honest, there really has not been many people come forward and say, I'm lost in this process, I need help. If there are, by all means, call me directly, email, come in. I will be more than happy to assist them. This is not a process that is designed to attack or identify groups of individuals that somehow the staff dislikes. That is not what we do. That is not our motive. That's not our operative. We're here to make this a safer community, a more compatible community as best as we can. We are not here to throw up roadblocks or red tape in any process. Either it's short-term rentals, whether it's building a deck, whether it's a 100-lot subdivision. We're here to help. That's what all city staff is here to do.
Yeah, I do want to say, part of my motivation in working through this is to ensure that short-term rental operators have a good idea of what they should be doing with regard to safety standards in particular. And when Jeremy spoke to us, he said that one reason for an inspection was to educate people who own short-term rentals and tell them, you know, this is the kind of thing you really need to be doing. And I had the state is responsible for electrical inspections. So I want to make sure I don't sound like I'm blaming the city for it, but I installed an electric vehicle charging station in my garage that involved pulling 6-gauge cable with a 50-amp breaker. That's a lot of electricity. And when the state came and inspected it, he didn't even look at the connection into the outlet that governed the electric vehicle charging station. He didn't even look at the cable. He just marched over to the electrical box, looked at the 50-amp breaker, signed the document. I mean, it was very distressing to me that this fellow was not inspecting the work that I had done. It was not prepared to offer any assistance at all to me if I'd done something incorrectly, which so far the house hasn't burned down. I didn't do it. I did it correctly. I know I did. But I think in terms of what the city inspectors do, it's that educational process, that process of telling people these are the safety standards that are best met for your short-term rental. It seems to me that's a good part of the motivation on my part for having regulations. Okay, so, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, John, and I think that that's an excellent, I want to comment on that because it's an excellent benefit that the city of Pullman gets. If you called up the state and said, will you come out and inspect my electrical for free and give me some comments on the general safety of my electrical, both before your electrical vehicle charging station and after, the state would have said, no, we will not do that. But if you call up the city here, you'll be directed that someone will come out and inspect your house for safety things and meet with you and comment on them, and there will be no charge, right? I have had that done. I have a long-term rental. One of my residents requested that be done many, many years ago. She actually asked me, would it be okay if she did it? And I said, yeah, let's see what he finds, right? I'm curious. And so we came out. I wasn't there, but she went through it with him. I had a good relationship with her. She reported back to me. I don't remember that I even did anything after the inspection, but it was incredibly educational, right? A wonderful benefit that we have that. Doesn't happen with electrical in the state. You're going to pay for both of those visits when that person comes out. And like you found, you may not get a whole lot of direction. City of Pullman does a much better job in that regard. But when I mention that, right, if you have a short-term rental, as any of the operators out here who came, right, you don't have to, before you're thinking of being a short-term rental, you're thinking, I wonder if I would run into any problems. You just call. They'll come out. They'll do an entire inspection. They'll do it all and they'll talk to you and you'll pay nothing. And now you know you're going to pass when you do file your application. Of course, you would pay some money and the person would come out and say, yeah, I remember being here and it all looked good. Looks like it's all good now. Right? So we have a bit of a disconnect here where it's a wonderful benefit that the city offers this, especially for long-term rentals. Not many take advantage of it, but you can also apply it to medium-term and short-term rentals where this all can be done and you can gain wonderful advice on the safety of your residence or your rental, and you don't have to pay for any of it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there is a lot the city can do, and there is a lot the city does do in education and information and everything that's not regulation driven. They're not educating because they have to, because there's a regulation and because there's a permit and an inspection, right? The fire marshal and the fire department are all about that. They do that a lot. I see what you're saying, but I don't think it has to be tied to a regulation. I think we could provide education and information and guidance and everything. You don't have to have regulations and application fees and application process to accomplish some of those same things.
Maybe I'll make one other comment, John. Ariel and I talked about this early on when we did the 6 public meetings. And I just want to bring this back to light because in engineering, there's a saying as to what gets measured gets changed, or what gets measured gets improved. It's an important saying, right? Because if you measure something and then you make a change, how do you know that you did good, that you didn't do bad? And you don't unless you have some measurement prior to making the change and some measurement after making the change. And you say, look at that. I only touched one thing. I made a change. And look at how much better the thing is because of the change. Okay, so I say that little story for this is that we haven't been collecting metrics. There's no, we don't have metrics. Unless you consider that for 5 years we haven't had 0 complaints. So we put the ordinance in place and now we have 0 complaints. I don't know if we did good or not. We had 0, we put ordinances, we still have 0. At least we didn't do bad, we would know that. But I would love it if we would get to a point where we have some measure of success, some metric, some measurement that says we're doing good, we did good. Because my suspicion is that we had no ordinances and we had people for probably a decade doing short-term rentals. Illegally, okay, but they did them for 10 years. And so we had good history on this. We can take advantage of that. And now we've got a little bit of time with the ordinance that's in place right now, and perhaps there'll be a new ordinance. But years from now, who knows what the turnover rate will be in the planning department and the planning commission, but it may not be any of us here. And other people will be making changes to this. And there's no way they're going to go back and collect metrics from years and years in the past. If we had them and we were keeping them and monitoring them, we have an opportunity to continue to do good on the things we want to do good on. For example, I agree. I think safety is a good thing. We should address it. I don't think we have a safety problem, but right? So we're not fixing a safety problem. I'll reiterate that, right? The Airbnb platform is incredibly efficient. I know it's hard for anyone to believe this that hasn't been involved in the Airbnb community. It is incredibly efficient at weeding out anybody who even blinks wrong. You're gone. You're off the platform and you can't make money, as Carl said, right? Take a half a star, Aaron said it, right? Take a half a star off your rating and you're out of business. So, but I would love to say that we made some movement in the safety. If we do something to fix a non-safety problem, did we not make it bad? I don't know, but we don't have metrics. I would love that we have a discussion about metrics. Like, can we measure something that says we're doing something good or bad, which we should change if we're doing bad, and look at metrics every once in a while.
Okay. So the next step, in coordination with the building official, the staff will prepare categories including exemptions for our consideration. Is that right?
Absolutely. We'll
Okay.
get that ready for next month.
Okay.
I'd like to actually, that's fine, I'm gonna do that too. I've written what we did last meeting and tried to get the language just right. I'd like to provide that and then have you guys take that away and just make sure we're not missing something. Work with Jeremy or whatever. And say, does this definition and exemption as written, does this work? So maybe we tackle it from two different ways, is that okay?
Which language are you talking about?
So I can email it to you, but I'll just read it for the benefit. So starting with definitions, we already have a definition that's owner, so I'm leaving that one. The definition is owner, person that owns and holds legal and equitable title to the property. I think we need a new definition that'd be long-term resident. And I would propose a person that resides at the property for at least 6 months during the calendar year. The long-term resident may be the owner, family member, renter, on-site caretaker, or similar, as long as that person resides at the property. A landlord or property manager or similar person that does not reside at the property is not a long-term resident. An individual cannot be a long-term resident for multiple properties. And then we get to the exemption. I think we needed that definition for the exemption. The exemption would be STR does not include a dwelling unit where all of the following apply. A, there is a long-term resident at the same property, and B, 2 or fewer bedrooms are rented short-term at any time, and C, the total occupancy of the dwelling unit does not exceed 10 persons. So I'd like to see if maybe the city staff can vet that thing out a little bit and see if we're missing something or need to tweak the language.
If we're at the general consensus of that, if you want to send that to me, because I don't think I have that from you.
Yeah,
If
no,
that's the consensus of the planning commission, we'll go with that for next month.
Does that sound okay to everybody?
Can I ask about the last two, sorry?
Yeah.
Is that all right? 2 or fewer bedrooms and fewer than 10 people did we talk about a scenario where you could have 1 or 2 bedrooms and like 9 people? Is that realistic?
I think that's one of the things we need to vet out, right?
Okay.
Okay, so I'll give you an example. And that's where I think we need to have a definition, and then I think we need to proof test it. We need to throw real-world examples at it and say, okay, is it in the exemption and is it not? So here's one. I got a 4-bedroom house, and I'm going to Airbnb 2 rooms, but I have a wife and 4 kids, so I'm at 6 people already. I'm going to Airbnb my 2 rooms in the rec room in the basement, and I'm going to advertise it and rent it for up to 6 people. Is that okay? I don't know. Those are the kind of things I think we need to do. I think we need to have a definition, and then I think we need to proof test it with real-world cases and say yes or no, that would fit under that definition. I think that's the only way we do that.
We already have by the way, we already have a pathway for that. So
Okay.
there's the 2 per bedroom. So there's some basic occupancy limits.
Right.
And then there's which I touched on this briefly last night, there's a administrative variance for additional occupancy.
Okay.
So for instance, if there is a 1,500 square foot bedroom, I don't know,
Yeah.
and they can demonstrate that 2 people is good, but 6 is better, then we'll take a look at that,
Okay.
right? So there is a pathway already in our code for those wild situations.
Right.
But for your general bedroom,
Okay.
I don't think you really want more than 2 people in there.
Yeah.
Like a big bunk room or something?
But yeah, that's all I'm saying is I think if we had some definitions, and then even if we had those definitions, I would maybe even, if you guys are open to it, like people in the community who have Airbnbs or thinking about Airbnbs and they're saying, I wonder how this definition would affect me. Would they be able to contact you and say, if that definition gets approved, would I be exempt or not? Is that okay?
Anybody can contact at us at any time.
Right, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, we are not going to say, no, don't call.
Okay.
Right?
Even if it's a hypothetical, the planning commission is still
We
kind
get
of debating.
hypotheticals
Yeah.
on a lot of things, on a lot of topics.
Okay.
And we answer and we go through all of them.
Okay.
So under no way would I say that if you ask us a question, no, we're not going to answer that.
Okay, perfect. I think that could be really helpful to people because that's a lot of what I get from other people is they don't understand whether I don't really understand the state definition, right? So I think if we have a definition and then people can kind of proof test themselves against it or we can proof test it, I think it would be helpful.
We have had people write to us who said, I have a large room that could readily accommodate X number of people.
Yeah.
So they're out there.
Yeah, and that administrative variance thing, I think, is a key thing to bring up.
Okay, so
One more.
under this, I know,
Well-
under this definition, then, if an owner-occupied home is renting 1 or 2 rooms, they don't have to do anything with the city. Is that right?
Well, I guess so, because it's an exemption, so you're out.
Yeah.
The question is, if you're in, then what happens? And that would be the second part of the discussion, I think.
Okay, Lorena?
I just had a question for RJ, and that is, if it comes to an administrative variance, how does that happen? Does it go back to the hearing inspector? Does it get done in the planning department? What's the process?
Well, if somebody did say, I have a 1,500 square foot bedroom, I would go to the building official and say, what is a reasonable occupancy here? What do the exit routes look like? Is it on the first floor? Do the windows open in case of an emergency? So we're going to look at a lot of things. You know, if it's on the 3rd floor of a house, maybe there's some things that we could do to make it a little bit better. But it's really hard to just come out and say that we're going to look at these things and then that's the cut and dry, because every house is going to have some characteristics that would factor into what a realistic load would be for that size of a room.
But an administrative variance is essentially a meeting with you and staff, and you guys make a decision, and there's no cost or fee associated with that. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, no
Okay.
cost. They can file an application on our portal. They don't have to come in. But if
Okay.
they want to, like I said, they are more than welcome to come in.
Yes.
Hopefully I've made that clear.
Yeah.
They can call, they can email. It's a administrative decision, meaning me. We post in case anybody feels the need to appeal. That's never happened in the history of Pullman. And then after that, then they're done. After the appeal period, then they're done. It's a very simple,
Simple
free
of it.
process.
Okay.
And it skips, probably should have done this a little bit more last night too. It skips over that having to wait a month for a public meeting with the hearing examiner. You don't have to pay the fee for the hearing examiner.
Right.
You don't have to wait for his decision. We don't have to put together a staff report. There's no public noticing.
Yeah.
It's about as simple as you could get.
Right, okay, perfect. And if they didn't like your answer, then they can appeal and escalate it, and then it's hearing examiner stuff. Is that correct?
Right. Also,
Okay.
we've never had an appeal on an administrative decision on the applicant. So
Okay.
usually, most administrative appeals, they've already talked to me. We've already gone over their situation,
Yeah,
and it's already been discussed to the point where they feel comfortable in applying. I feel comfortable in what the ask is for the variance, and then it moves forward.
okay. And I'll echo, because I've been critical. I know I come across critical when I don't mean to. People I know, people who have talked to me, people who have reached out to your department have good things to say. They talk about how helpful you are, how responsive you are. I got an email back in 15 minutes, stuff like that. I get a lot of really positive feedback. What happened on STRs, I think, is a lot. Some people got very intimidated out of the gate, maybe when they didn't need to be. There was a lot of talk about $250 fines, stuff like per day fines, and people got nervous, and at least some people told me, I'm nervous about reaching out to the city. I don't want them, I'm afraid they're gonna write, if I ask a question, they're gonna write down my name and address and start searching me up to see what I'm doing. And so there was, some people were scared. And I'm not saying whether they needed to be or not, but that's kind of what happened. What I'm trying to say is people that have talked to you and have worked with you have found you very helpful and very responsive and everything else. It's just some people were too scared to. So I'm hoping that by clarifying things, we can get over that hurdle. But yes, you guys have a great reputation for being helpful, being responsive, not being bureaucratic. So thank you. And I'm sorry I come across critical.
I can tell you, on behalf of all staff of the Community Development Department, that customer service is a priority, and I would like to believe that our work reflects that we are responsive, that we are upfront in what we're asking for. There's items to every project that may be changing as you move forward. And so when they come in for a pre-application meeting and the end product may be vastly different and things change, and I can understand that. But since I've been here in 2020, the message has been consistent that we are here to help folks, that they are available to come in and meet. I'll meet offsite if they feel intimidated by City Hall. I don't want people to think that City Hall is like the DMV or the dentist office. No offense to those folks, but we're here to help. This is a building built by tax dollars, or remodeled by tax dollars, I should say. So they should feel welcomed here. And I would like to think that if there's barriers to them calling or coming in or emailing or any number of ways of contacting us, what those barriers are and how I can remove or eliminate them, I would certainly do that.
I'm nervous about exempting owner-occupied with 1 or 2 rooms. I think the city has a responsibility for safety. I appreciate the fact that Airbnb and Vrbo and so forth, that people going to those places can say, might very well say, my goodness, there wasn't even a diagram of how to get out of the place. What if there'd been a fire? I wouldn't have known. I think this, for those people, I think the city is providing a service, again, by having somebody look over the place and say, these are the kinds of things you should do to improve safety, and these are the kinds of things that are required in state law, in fact. I'm nervous about exempting owner-occupied with 1 or 2 bedrooms for that reason. And secondly, for those who do not advertise on Airbnb or Vrbo, for people who are, I don't know, you can rent through Facebook. And people who are circulating the word at the Coug and saying, you know, I have a house you can rent. I have a room you can rent for the, you know, Husky football weekend. For those people, I think we're going to encourage safety when they might not be aware of it. So I think on the one hand, the city is providing a service by saying, these are the things you have to do to bring your house up to, your property up to city standards, and as a consequence, bring them up to Airbnb standards. And for those who aren't on those bigger sites, we're providing a service to the public who might be renting from them. So I'm nervous about exempting owner-occupied with 1 or 2 rooms to rent.
All right, comment about that, John. So for the bigger platforms, right, the system, for all of the years that we've had them in Pullman, we don't have any reports of safety incidences, right? Maybe there was a safety incident, didn't get reported, but we have no metric that says we have any safety problem. So it's hard to do something and say we made an improvement that was good because we were 0, and we can know if we did bad because you start climbing and then you say, well, that was the wrong thing to do. We have more safety incidents now after the ordinance than before. But for the people that are on the platform, I feel like, I know it's hard for you to trust. That platform is brutal. If we had this in life, in everything you did, you would be an immaculate citizen, because when you lose half a star, all of your benefits are taken away. You have to strive for perfection on every single guest, or you're not in business anymore. It's that brutal. I know it's hard to believe that, but it is that brutal. The people who aren't on those platforms, they don't have that system, right? You could have somebody come and stay in an unsafe environment and we wouldn't know it because that feedback system isn't nearly as immediate and critical. But that's a different player in this game. For the most part, my suspicion is those players aren't playing this game. They aren't paying their lodging taxes voluntarily, and they're collecting they probably don't report any kind of taxes, federal, state, whatever. They have figured out how to operate occasionally on the gray market. And I think it's occasionally because the only time you can really take advantage of it is when there's a sold out weekend in Pullman. And that occurs, let's say, 8-ish times a year, ballpark 8-ish times a year, right? And they've figured out how to stay in the gray market. if we really want those people to be safe, we have to figure out how to pull them out of that gray market. How do we get them into the formal market so they play the game correctly? And if we make onerous ordinances, we push them deeper into the gray market. They're not coming. They'll go kicking and screaming before they do anything. I think the one way we can make them come out of the gray market is to say, it's really very simple to do this the right way. The city will help you. They're very friendly. You should go in and talk to them. It doesn't cost you anything to do it the right way. And then you can be on these platforms and imagine the more legitimate business that you will get as a member of being on the platform. But when we start to fix a non-existent problem with more ordinances or more restrictions or more inspections, we just push that, and I think it's a small amount of people in Pullman, we push them further into the gray market. Or maybe you could call it the black market, right? They're just going to avoid all of this. We know they're out there. I see them. There's 2 Facebook groups that I'm a member of, and I see it all the time. People stay in Pullman and they bypass this system completely. You know, people speed on the way to Spokane too, right? And most people are doing it the right way, but there's a few people that are doing it the wrong way. If we really want to pull those people back into doing it correctly, we have to encourage them, not discourage them.
I think, first of all, the notion that we haven't had a disaster, therefore everything's okay, is, I mean, you're familiar with metrics. Oftentimes, a metric is 1 in a million, and that 1 in a million is a real disaster. You can read in the newspaper occasionally about fires in nightclubs and the like that kill 40 people. That's not going to happen here. I'm not saying it is, but I think we need to look at the possibility of, you know, what could happen, not from the standpoint of being overwrought about it, but as I said, I think that the standards that we have in the code that we've written are fairly minimal. And imagine somebody who establishes an Airbnb and 2 weeks into it, somebody offers up a 4 rating because the person doesn't have a fire extinguisher, doesn't have exit routes mapped, you know, somebody who knows about safety, and says, you know, there's none of the, there's no light there's no light that would illuminate if the electricity goes off and so forth. That could be a disaster. And what I'm saying is we could very well be doing a service to people by telling them, these are the standards that you're going to be expected to meet in general. And we will offer the building inspector to come and look over your place and say, you know, it's safe. And then you're not going to be suffering in the ratings business. As for people who are not on the platform, they're just going to have to do what they want to do. But I want to be able to tell people in Pullman and people who are coming here to Pullman, the city has standards, and these are the standards. And I think we need to have those standards. I don't want to go too far tonight because we have the staff preparing information and issues for us at our February meeting, and that could be a better place to talk about it. But if somebody else has to say, I'm not saying I have to have the last word. If somebody else wants to talk, go ahead. Okay. Does the staff need anything from us?
So to clarify, for February, we're going to look at incorporating what Brent has sent us. Thank you. And then we're going to talk with Jeremy about the 4 categories that were discussed in December and see how those fit in with land use and building code. Mm-hmm. And that is what we're looking at. We're not looking at actually putting them into the code yet as amendments. We're just looking at that discussion piece.
The commission says yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Let's not write that up as a proposed red line to Chapter 17 that we're going to do a resolution. Let's keep it a little more as a discussion for now. It's not quite to the red line point. Is that? Yeah, agreed.
John, can I ask for one more thing? So to address John and I's disagreement on the 2-bedroom issue, Ariel, I wonder, the state, for some reason, probably a good reason, I just don't know what it is, wrote a definition in RCW about why 2 bedrooms would be excluded when they're owner occupied for 6 months or greater, right? That's kind of specific. Owner, 6 months, 2 bedrooms. So they put some thought into it. And there must be a reason behind it. I think I know the answer, right? But John seems to be of the opinion, doesn't matter to me. I want everybody, want the rules to be applied universally. I would love to know the reasoning behind that. The state did that because.
I've done some original, I've done some reading of the original bill, and it doesn't really identify a why. I'd be interested to hear what you think the reason is, Scott. The only thing I can come up with, purely speculation, is that a 2-bedroom rental has a relatively minimal impact on a neighborhood. However, the bill, or the RCW, if you notice, is housed under the Department of Revenue umbrella, which is very unique in my perspective. So why 2 bedrooms, and why would the Department of Revenue care? I don't know. But I'd be interested to hear what you think.
Well, I thought it was because of the building code, right? So this change of transient versus non-transient, that's where I thought they landed, was to say it's not a change of use for residential if you live there. And to live there, we have to give it some amount of time, right? You can't say I was there 1 day out of the year, so pick a time. They picked 6 months. Okay, good, 6 months. And then they said, well, we can't let it be an infinite number of rooms in a house. Okay, what's a neat number? 2. 2 seems good. I don't know, could have been 3, could have been 1, but they settled on 2 for some reason. What was specifics? Oh, and then it has to be the owner. So they did those 3 things. And I thought that had to do with the building code, that it wasn't a change of, it didn't move the residents into non-transient. So now that it didn't move it into transient. Now I'm still non-transient. And now I don't have to meet a lot of the other requirements because I'm basically under the residential code. That was my thought, but I'm making this up. I didn't do as much as you did, RJ. I did not read the bill, so you're at an advantage.
So Jeremy and I did kind of take a look at that, and it does align with the exemptions in the International Residential Code. So you are exempt from being a lodging house, or you don't have to do the sprinkler system as a lodging house if you are owner occupied doing fewer than 3 rooms. I don't believe the building code really defines what owner occupied means, so maybe that's why they threw 6 months on there. But Jeremy and I sat down and looked at the RCW and looked at the building code, and that is the closest we got to maybe that's why.
Maybe it came from there, yeah.
Because once you hit that 3, then lodging houses require that sprinkler system in the building code.
That's what I understood from December too, that the less than, whether you want to say less than 3 or 2 or less, it's kind of, that was building code, and the owner occupied thing was building code. The 6 months, kind of, where'd that come from? But again, how do you define owner occupied? So,
Yeah.
Well, that's primary residence.
Is that,
That's 6 months.
okay, so it's like IRS type primary residence
Yeah,
type?
yeah.
Primary residence.
So
Or
that
or you
got rid
can
of being
vote.
2.
Okay,
So you can't be the owner occupied on 2 places, right? Because if it's greater than 6 months, then
Yes.
I don't qualify on the second place. So I can see where 6 months, that makes
that
sense.
makes sense.
And I'm thinking they did that to carry the logic even further, because if you're there legitimately, not lying, but you're legitimately there for more than half of the year, and I think for most people in Pullman, it's probably full year residency or most close to a full, you have a pretty good eye on the property. You know when safety things are creeping up. I think when you're there occasionally, safety things can creep up and you wouldn't see them. So you know, and then I think when it's 1 or 2 bedrooms in a house, it could be truly 1 or 2 bedrooms that are not accessed ever except for when they're being rented out. But again, I don't think that's likely the case here in Pullman. I think they're probably accessed when they're not being rented out. So I know that was the case when I was renting my room, right? It's 1 bedroom. It's only rented on event weekends. And I use that space when it's not being rented. So is my eye on it? Yep. almost every day, 12 months out of the year, my eyes on that room, so I know whether there's a safety issue coming up. But that's me, that's not everybody. We have to write rules for everybody when we have these obscure cases. But, okay, yeah, I leave it there.
Anybody else?
The only thing I'm going to ask, John, and maybe you want to cover this when we talk about upcoming meetings, but we're all pretty tired of this topic, right? Is it, in the spirit of ripping the Band-Aid off, do we want to try to do it faster? Do we want to try to, I mean, we could, February and then March and then April. We as a commission have the option of setting special meetings and so that we can kind of accelerate stuff, right? It puts a burden on staff too, but I'm just going to throw that out there is, do we want to try to do this faster? Or do you want to hold that for upcoming meetings?
Anybody have any comments?
I would argue that we do want to do it faster, especially if we have businesses shutting down because of what's in there now. We want to stop that. So that's just my thoughts.
And even City Council did ask for something back by March, and it was asked to staff, right? And it's taken care of. So they haven't asked us for that, but I'm just saying they expressed a desire to. Can we stop talking about this? Can we put this to bed? So I think City Council would appreciate it if we were able to accelerate it in a reasonable. I think they would appreciate it too. So, but it puts a effort on you guys too.
Can I make a comment to that?
Please.
If that's the case, I would ask the commission to respect the availability of staff, the availability of this room, before making any scheduling decisions.
Yes. Okay.
Because there are some things that, family requirements, there's a capacity issue with staff coming up starting next week. So there's some things that are behind the scenes that are also important to staff.
100%. Yep. Okay.
Before we make any concrete decisions on what days we'll meet, first of all, make sure that this room's available and make sure that staff has the capacity to attend and have materials ready in a timely fashion.
Okay.
I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver.
Would it be okay if you guys, if staff looked at that and maybe came back to us with a doodle poll or something about availability, if you feel like you could support it, or if you feel like you can't, that's fine too. But if you feel like you could support it, we don't have to decide tonight. But I think in general, are we all, it's on us too, are we all in agreement that we'd be willing to do some extra meetings just to get this done?
I can be here, but I don't think we need extra meetings.
Okay.
But I detect that I'm in the minority.
Yeah, I not that I matter more than 1/7 of this, right? But my partner Ginger is doing what we did last year. She's gone. I stayed specifically so I would be here and not miss another meeting. So I'm going to take some travel in February and March. So moving at a much faster pace would help me for the reason that I stayed here. So.
Okay, I detect that we want to have special meetings. We have to have at least 7 days' notice. We have to publish at least 7 days' notice. So the staff is going to have to work
I
through
don't think that's correct.
for a special meeting,
It's 24 hours.
24 hours.
is it? Oh,
We just get everything out a week in advance, so you have plenty of time to review materials before the meeting.
okay.
How, that being said, for the benefit of the public, I wouldn't want to do 24 hours notice, right? I mean, even though we could, so, yeah.
And then
I think
once-
if we can't advertise it at least 7 days in advance, then I think we shouldn't do it. That's just my opinion.
And then once we get to public hearing, where we're actually considering changes, then we have noticing requirements as well.
Okay, yes,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So I understand wanting to speed the process, and I also want to go on to other topics as well. Keeping our regular meeting time makes it a lot easier to make sure we're hitting those deadlines and notice deadlines and making sure everyone knows when we're talking about what we're talking about, getting materials online and published,
Right.
and making sure we can hit all those deadlines without, well, now we're meeting on this date, so now they're changing to this, and oh, well, we didn't actually hit that because, so.
I would feel like for our final meeting on this, when we take final action and assuming we're making a recommendation to city council, I would like to see that fall on a regular meeting for that, just that last one for that reason, for exactly what you're saying. Okay.
Okay. So, we're asking the staff to move through this as best they can, provide information to us, and ask us when we can meet. It's worth knowing that we cannot meet on a Tuesday unless, we have to have a recording of the meeting. So we cannot meet on a Tuesday unless we want to meet at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Other days of the week, we couldn't meet. Whenever another body has this room, we can't meet. So we would be restricted. Anyway, so we will wait to hear from you. Okay, anybody else? All righty, that concludes this part of our meeting. All right, we're moving on. Wait a minute. Sorry, I need to find my agenda. Okay, the only other thing we have is other business. Does anybody have any other business?
John, I have two items. One is we had a discussion in December meeting about special meetings, and there was some disagreement or confusion about what we can and can't do at a special meeting. And I just wanted to follow up on that.
Okay, what did you have in mind?
Well, we were told in December that it's a special meeting. We were not allowed to modify the agenda. And I think what we have found, or at least what I have found, and what I've set out to John and Sean and RJ, is that the only thing that we cannot do at a special meeting is we cannot take final action. But at a special meeting, we can modify the agenda, we can take public comment, we can pretty much do anything we would do at a regular meeting. So if we wanted to change the agenda, if we wanted to add something, if we wanted to discuss something, if we wanted to introduce new business, we could. We just can't take final action.
Okay, that's substantially correct. However,
Okay.
Robert's Rules of Order says, agenda for special meeting. The agenda is restricted to only such business that appears in the call of the meeting unless these words are included in the call and such other business as may properly come before it. We could include those words. I should back up a little bit and say, we are bound to conduct our meetings in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order. That's the basic framework for our meetings. We could include that language in our special meetings. However, we are bound not just by Robert's Rules of Order, but by other standards, particularly, in my mind, the Open Public Meetings Act for the state of Washington. Special meetings are covered also in the revised Code of Washington, which says the call and notices required under subsections 1 and 2 of this section, so forth, shall specify the time and place of the special meeting and the business to be transacted. Final disposition shall not be taken on any other matter at such meetings by the government body. So as a consequence, yes, we can expand the agenda. Guidance, however, from the MRSC, which is Municipal Research Service, is it? It's something like that. It's a nonprofit organization of the state of Washington that provides guidance to municipalities. It says much the same thing. The MRSC says much the same thing. Members of a commission can change the agenda for special meetings, but cannot take final action. In the case of this commission's December meeting, the staff's comments and the agenda both said that we would be considering only categories of short-term rentals, not short-term rentals in general. In my mind, then, taking up the issue of short-term rentals specifically in that meeting would contradict the agenda and staff comments. Such action would violate the Open Public Meetings Act because people who might have talked to us about STRs in general and who knew the details of the agenda would not have attended the meeting. I don't know that there's anybody sitting at home in Pullman thinking, oh, I can't go to the Planning Commission meeting because they're not going to consider short-term rentals in general. I don't think anybody's doing that. I think, however, we need to consider the implications of the Open Public Meetings Act while we are considering what we're going to do. And as a consequence, while I certainly admit my ruling that changing the agenda to allow for general comments was out of order, I admit that that was based on instinct. But now that I've read about it, my instinct, I believe, was correct, that we would be in violation of the Open Public Meetings Act. And I will say much the same thing about changing the agenda in general. We have an agenda for special meetings, and the rules say we can't consider anything else in a special meeting with provisions for changing the agenda. But I think that we are running up against the Open Public Meetings Act when we do that. I will add, I'm reading RJ's mind here, I will add, we can eliminate this problem for 1 out of 6 of our meetings every year by changing the day that we meet. If we think that this is a problem of not being able to consider items not on the agenda at a special meeting, we need to change the days when we meet and not try to get around the rules. Okay, that's my conclusion. I'm perfectly prepared to hear other people's comments and opinions.
I'm okay with that. I think your instinct was correct. I think we did the right thing with regards to this topic in short-term rentals. Right. So I think if we would have had a discussion about possibly changing the agenda to do something different, and you would have kind of explained your position, I think I would have come around and agreed with you, yeah, let's not do it. And that's kind of what we ended up doing anyway. So I think but I just think it's, I've been on this commission for like 11 years, and I've heard that many times, oh, this is a special meeting, so we can't hear any new business. And and I've never questioned it before, but I think we were wrong in saying that. I think we can consider new business. I think we should be very, very careful when we do that, to your point, whether it's appropriate or not, and we should avoid it. But just to clarify, I think we could if we needed to for some reason.
What did you say about the Roberts rules where it has to contain the certain phrase? Can you say that again? Okay. And would there still be an open public meetings potential violation even if this is contained?
Okay. Robert's Rules of Order, and I quote, agenda for special meeting. The agenda is restricted to only such business that appears in the call of the meeting unless these words are included in the call, and such other business as may properly come before it. I think the real problem is the Open Public Meetings Act, not Robert's Rules of Order specifically. Okay.
So we have, over the years, talked about like the December and occasionally the November meeting.
It's always the November meeting. Because it's always the day before Thanksgiving. But usually December, always November, usually December. So that means that 1 out of 6 of our meetings are special meetings.
2 out of 12, to be clear. Is that what you're saying?
2 out of 12,
yeah,
that's
okay.
1 out of 6.
Good. I was like, I come to a lot more than 6 of these a year. So that would be a bylaws change, wouldn't it?
Yes, that would be a bylaws change, which we can do.
Would it, in your mind, is that like a special provision for just the November and December meeting? Or are you suggesting potentially changing like to the 3rd Wednesday of every month? What do you think?
I think that we have to meet on the same day every month. Am I correct in that?
I'd suggest just changing November, December, keeping the 4th Wednesday.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I would suggest changing November and December to the 3rd Wednesday. And
Okay,
keep
so
the other
having-
10 as the 4th Wednesday. Other 10 months as the 4th
I see.
Wednesday.
So the first 10
So that
months.
therefore we don't have a special meeting on November, December. We just simply change the meeting date to the 3rd Wednesday, and everybody's aware of that well in advance. It's almost become the norm over the last
It has.
handful of years.
It has.
So it's not really changing anything except for it's not labeled as a special meeting, and we can not have to consider, well, this is a special meeting only because we would otherwise meet next to Thanksgiving, and we wouldn't have to consider that, can we talk about this, can't we talk about this? It would just eliminate the ambiguity of a special meeting, and we move forward as normal, and we don't ever have to talk about special meetings again.
So can we do that? Can our regular meeting be the fourth Wednesday of January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, and the third Wednesday of November, December? We can just write it that way?
Yes. We could even change our start time if you'd like, so it's not 7 o'clock. Wink, wink.
It was 7:30, you may recall.
I do remember that.
What would you recommend?
Noon.
There's pickleball at noon.
Bring your lunch. No, I mean, in all honesty, these are long days for a lot of people. Last night was a long day for staff. Tonight's a long day. Today's a long day. Obviously, the back-to-back nights like that are relatively rare, but nonetheless, some of these meetings go late, and I think that we could all probably agree that the later a meeting goes, the less productive it becomes. So, I mean, if there's an opportunity to move it up in the day, earlier in the day, I would certainly welcome that.
How has it gone with city council? Because city council moved their meeting time, and it was kind of debated at the time whether that was, they said they do it as a trial basis. Have you heard any feedback or whether?
I think it's all been positive.
Okay.
Ideally, we have a 90-minute meeting, we're home by 7, and in the summer, you still get daylight, right?
Yeah, has that ever happened?
You can still spend time with family,
Okay, yeah.
right? You can still eat dinner with your family. Last night was obviously not the case, but family time is important to staff. It's important to the volunteers on the Planning Commission. It's important to city council members. So I think that's a good balance. If you aimed for a 5:30 start and you were hopeful to have a 90-minute meeting, you're home by 7, dinner by 7:15, 7:30, tuck the kids in, watch your shows, go to bed. It's a relatively normal night. I think it's been all positive. Feedback I've heard from staff on a 5:30 start has all been positive.
Yeah, the Historic Preservation Commission is meeting now at 6 o'clock. And I have to say, I was in the chair for the most recent Historic Preservation Commission meeting, which was a special meeting because of the Martin Luther King holiday, and we did change the agenda. But that commission is way, way different than this one. Somebody wanted to give us some information, okay. Anyway, we haven't started meeting at 6 o'clock yet, so I can't tell you how that's going. If we want to change the time, want to consider changing the time, let's put it that way, that's okay with me too.
Anybody opposed to a 5:30 start for planning commission?
Before we do that, I want to preface that with, let's check room availability.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I don't think there's anything here before us on fourth Wednesdays or third Wednesdays, but before we start making decisions, let me do a little bit of diligence and looking into what that may or may not look like.
The other thing I would ask is if maybe you would reach out when we have land use actions, would you reach out to some of the more typical people who come and testify to some of, we have some of the same engineers and applicants come over and over and over. Just see if anybody else would have real opposition to a 5:30. I mean, it'll be part of our meeting and somebody could come, and there were people that came and spoke at the city council meeting and said, don't change it. So we'll put it on, if we decide to do it, they have a chance, but would you be willing to reach out to a few people and just
Yeah,
see?
I think that you're going to hear that they would probably
They would
welcome a
probably
5:30
prefer,
start.
yeah.
That way, it's just a continuation of their workday,
okay.
rather than a stop and start.
Yeah, that's for people who are working. First of all, thank you for paying my Social Security. Second, it's, sorry, I always say that. Second, for people who are working, yeah, a 5:30 meeting is a good deal because you can leave work at 5 and be here in plenty of time. And for people who work in City Hall, same thing. Okay, I'm going to recommend that we consider a 5:30 start. Ask yourselves, just look over your calendars, make sure if that seems like a good idea. Also changing from the fourth Wednesday to the third Wednesday in November and December. And we'll report back. We'll reconsider this next month as well. And we might very well make a decision next month. Okay. Anybody else have anything about special meetings? All righty, does anybody have any other business?
I had one more, John, and that was about the posting of the recordings of posting the recordings of commission meetings. I was wondering if staff can explain how that works and if there's a target or a benchmark that we could establish that says recordings will be posted to board docs in X number of days.
Yeah, usually it's done within, I would say, 3-ish days after the meeting. This
Okay.
last month, it just got missed, so this
Okay,
was an
okay.
exception.
This one was an
Yeah.
anomaly. All
But
right.
generally, it's within a couple days.
Okay.
Because we have
so-
to get it from IT and then upload it, and it just takes time to download, but
Okay,
it's
so
usually
it's,
pretty fast.
if somebody asks, like, oh, I missed the meeting, but I wanted to hear what it said, I can generally point them to the library and say, it usually takes 3 business days or something
Yeah.
like that. That's fair, okay, that's all I have.
Make sure you spell your name right in the minutes. Make sure you spell your name right in the minutes. No.
Now you're in the minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
One other comment on that, the link in our minutes where it says click here for the audio recordings, it was going to 2023 or something. It was an old link or something, so. Oh, sure, I just clicked on it, you did. Okay, thanks, yeah, got it, thanks.
We're moving to a new platform soon, too, where everything will be housed, so hopefully it will be a little more concise.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, because now you have to rely on like a third party to kind of do stuff, right? Kinda-
Yeah, it'll still be a third party, but it'll
Okay.
just be a little different.
All right, cool.
Okay. Do we have any other business? Do we have any other business from anybody in the audience? Any other business from the staff?
More of just a heads up. There are some state deadlines for some code changes happening. We have to have them done by June of this year, so in March, we're going to have a public hearing on some additional code changes from state laws that have been passed. So we're looking at some infill development, parking, and it's called step housing if you look it up on Department of Commerce, but it's emergency housing, emergency shelters, temporary housing, and permanent supportive housing. So
When you say parking, what do
Yes.
you mean by that?
the state has told us what our parking requirements will be, and we cannot require more than what the state mandates are. 5184? Thank you. I knew he'd knew. So yeah, I think it's like substitute engrossed Senate Bill 5184 are the new state mandated parking regulations.
So you don't anticipate that'll be a big single or multi-meeting topic at this stage?
It can come next month if you want. It's
No, I'm
ready.
just, sounds like we're rolling it in because it's happened, it's a state thing, we're
Oh,
just
yeah.
like rubber stamping it at
We
this
still
point?
have to do our public hearing and code
Okay.
change and all that, but it is a state mandate we can't do anything about.
Once
A
upon a time,
reduction.
We can gripe about it.
well, we-
Reduction in parking requirements.
Yeah.
sure.
But it's very prescriptive, like, they're telling us what we have to do. We're not necessarily proposing to do any more or any less, is that correct?
Correct.
I'm not
Well,
opposed
we could do,
to
we could
that.
still do less.
But-
Yeah, if you all
okay.
want, we can reduce it even more. It's
But staff
slashing what our
wasn't-
current ones are.
Staff wasn't proposing to do something different than what the state's mandating, right?
No.
Okay.
We have somebody in the audience who knows a lot more about this than I do, but I understand that the state law is quite restrictive in the sense of not allowing cities to require parking under a lot of circumstances. It's very limited what the city can require. Am I right about that?
Yes and no. So the state has what we can have as our parking. There's a lot of parking exceptions, I'll say it that way, for fully planning jurisdictions under the Growth Management Act. So like, they can't require parking for accessory dwelling units. We still can. That follows the state code. They can't require parking if you're within a certain distance of like rapid bus transit. we don't have rapid bus transit, I want to put that out there. But like, we still could, as long as it's following the state code.
Okay, so you're going to have a meeting in March, and it's going to cover parking, and this business about residences for homeless people and so forth, that's coming along. We have an agency that's about to build, I think it's 3 duplexes in Pullman specifically for reduced cost housing. They have some money to support that. I'm sorry.
The CHIP grant?
The Hills and Rivers Land Trust?
What is it?
Hills and Rivers? On Main and Elm?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, 8 units,
unit.
not for homeless. They're for home ownership.
Right, that's correct, but it's for people of certain incomes.
Yes.
Yeah. But, you know, that whole issue, though, as I said, is really coming along. We're going to see more and more of that. Union Gospel Mission just built a facility in Lewiston for, I think it's transitional housing of some sort.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're going to see that. That's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, this is not a homeless shelter, which
Right.
you said
That's
homeless and it
correct.
just perked my ears.
Yeah, that's correct.
It is actually home ownership
Yes, it is.
on leased land?
Yes,
Owned
yes.
by the land trust?
That's right.
Right, so it's a really, really good program.
I would like, if you were in contact with those people, I would like for them to come and talk to us at some point.
Oh, Nils Peterson
Nils.
he'd eat that up.
I know he would, yeah. I, for one, would like to hear from Nils sometime, very much so.
He did a great presentation for city council a number of months
Yeah,
back, kind of when they
yeah.
were first getting going.
Yeah. Okay,
So question on that, you mentioned like 4 different things, right? Was that what it was? So 4 or 5?
Oh, for the code?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the parking, infill development, so if you were adding like more units into an existing building, the step housing, and then I guess the one thing I'm still wordsmithing with our commerce representative or our regional planner with Department of Commerce is the siting of organic material facilities. And so pretty much what we've been told is we have to allow it where the county says, but it's hard to put that into a code.
okay.
So I'm kind of working the wordsmith out with Department of Commerce on what they actually want to see in our code for that. So those are like the 4 main things that have come out in state law.
And this is back from our last code revision thing. One of the lessons learned is we kind of tried to do too much in one. At least lesson learned for me, we tried to do too much in one, right? It would have been easier to break it up. Just asking the question with your knowledge of this, do you think it's appropriate to do all of these as one because they're prescriptive, maybe not super controversial, and so we can do this, or do you think there'd be any benefit to breaking them up? RJ's saying package it all as one, we can do this. Okay, good.
It's simple,
Okay,
right?
That, and if we don't hit the timeline, the state's going to override us anyway.
yeah, okay, all right. There you go.
It's very, very simple.
Okay.
okay. I point out that we committed to doing something about parking as we work through the code. Okay. Anybody else have any, that conclude that part of other business? Okay, anybody else on the staff, does the staff have any other business for us?
No.
Okay, let me get back to my agenda. Okay, that concludes our business. Forthcoming meetings, we have meetings on February 25, March 25, and April 22nd. Does anybody know of any conflicts you have on either of those 3 dates?
I'm out on February 25th.
Okay. Anybody else? Scott, you said, oh, okay. Okay, that concludes our business. The next item is adjournment. Do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Joe and a second from a very quick-witted Angela. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're.